Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
It's Sophie and Worth. Good morning from both of us. Thanks for joining us.
President Trump shares his account of his latest assassination threat and says he didn't make it easy for the Secret Service.
I started walking with him. I started walking, and they said, please go down on the floor. So I went down, and First Lady went down.
Against a backdrop of gunshots and heightened security, the King and Queen prepare for the first day of their state visit to Washington.
Police warn artificial intelligence is behind a disturbing new wave of child abuse.
We'll also be talking to Lisa Kenvan, whose son Isaac died after taking part in an online TikTok challenge, about whether the government is delaying a ban on social media for kids.
Plus, Sebastian Charway makes history by becoming the first person ever to run a marathon in under 2 hours at a record-breaking pace in London.
Good morning. Well, we begin with the attack at the White House Correspondents' Dinner this weekend, the third assassination threat against President Donald Trump.
The pictures are extraordinary. You can see here Melania Trump reacting before the president. Her face says it all.
And this is the moment that the suspect, Cole Thomas Allen, races past security, armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and several knives as well. Nobody was killed. One officer was shot, but thank you to his bulletproof vest, he was just wounded.
Well, the incident is being hailed by the president as a success for the Secret Service, but the suspect did come pretty close, and questions are swirling about how this could happen in the first place.
Well, here's Donald Trump. He spoke to CBS's 60 Minutes about the moment he was evacuated by the Secret Service.
It was a little bit me. I wanted to see what was happening, and I wasn't making it that easy for him. I wanted to see what was going on. And by that time, we started to realize maybe it was a bad problem, different kind of a problem, bad one, and different than what would be normal noise from a ballroom, which you hear all the time. And I was surrounded by great people, and I probably made them act a little bit more slowly. I said, wait a minute, let me see, wait a minute. So, you know, I'm telling guys...
Just at that moment where it looks like you go sort of down with the service, well, you were telling them to wait?
Well, I know what happened is then I started walking with him. I started walking, and they said, please go down on the floor. So I went down, and First Lady went down also.
Well, our US correspondent David Blevins was in the room, along with several of our colleagues from the Washington Bureau. Here's his report.
It is not the scene setter they wanted for the King and Queen's state visit. The top table didn't know it yet, but the gunman was already in the building. You can hear the shots being fired. Oblivious to the danger, the host was showing them a trick when Secret Service stormed the stage. The Vice President pulled from his chair. The President and First Lady evacuated. Armed agents piled onto the platform, their weapons drawn to eliminate any threat. Donald Trump hit the floor, normal protocol to remove him from the line of sight.
The president down directly in front of me, and we just look at each other for about 2 seconds. And my mind, obviously, this is like a huge adrenaline, just like, oh no, are we about to die?
Members of the cabinet were whisked to safety, agents forming human shields around them. We took cover beneath the tables, my colleague Mark Stone sheltering next to me.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, or certainly shots, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
And this was the scene outside the ballroom, the suspect detained on the ground. The president posted this picture of his arrest and video of the terror beforehand. He'd breached the security cordon, armed with a shotgun, handgun and several knives. One officer was shot during the altercation. His bulletproof vest saved his life. Safely back inside his bulletproof limo, they returned the president to the White House to reflect on what appears to have been the third attempt on his life.
I don't care how many people you have, how good they are. They can be the greatest people. You have the greatest security in history. If you have a whack job who's got a brain, but it's a little bit distorted or a lot distorted, they can make trouble.
This is the suspect. He's 31-year-old Cole Allen from California. They've searched his home outside Los Angeles and charged him with firearms and assault offences. The White House says the president and senior members of his administration were the intended target. It was a breathtaking breach of security and has prompted Buckingham Palace to review arrangements around what will be the first British state visit to the United States in nearly 20 years. Expect a ring of steel around the royal couple, including here on Capitol Hill, where King Charles will address both houses of Congress later this week.
The first takeaway, the takeaway that it should be obvious, is that the system worked and that we stopped this suspect, that we stopped him as soon as he tried to do what he was trying to do. And the president was safe, his cabinet was safe, and every reporter and every member of the press and their guests were safe as well.
The Prime Minister has spoken to the President and First Lady on the phone. Keir Starmer said he was shocked by the scenes from the Washington Hilton overnight. Images now part of Trump's battle for a new ballroom at the White House. He may have dodged another bullet, but this president never misses an opportunity.
Well, David, who was obviously sheltering behind the table, we've got a bit more from him. Let's listen.
1 minute I was chatting with my 4 colleagues. The next we were all lying on the floor beneath the table, sheltering in place and in the midst of an active shooter situation. Initially, it wasn't clear if the assailant was inside the ballroom or outside. It was clear that those heavily armed agents flooding the platform were more than prepared to eliminate anyone they perceived to be a threat. We all know that America has a long history of gun violence and politics. So when you are covering an event where the president is appearing in a public place, you're aware of the danger. But I don't think anything can prepare you for the moment when you hear what you think are gunshots and see the president, First Lady and Vice President being bundled away and become aware that you are surrounded by guns, fueling a few moments of sheer terror. We do now know, of course, that the assailant had already been apprehended just outside the door, and we've since learned that he had sent a 1,000-word document to 10 of his family and friends. In that, he apologised for what he was about to do. He didn't name President Trump directly, but did criticise his policies and talk about targeting his administration. He said he didn't expect to be forgiven for his actions, but signed off cold force, friendly federal assassin Allen. Those are chilling words indeed.
I think what's so striking about this particular event is how many other significant people were in the room in terms of the line of succession. You know, obviously J.D. Vance was a few seats down from the president, so I think that's why it's raising extra questions about whether the security should have been more effective and tighter, even if he didn't obviously get that close to President Trump and J.D. Vance himself. The other thing I think just to focus on as well is the fact that the assailant is alive. He's going to be charged today now, of course, in a court in Washington. And by all accounts, Todd Blanche, the acting US AG, is saying he's not cooperating. So I don't think he's speaking out and given much so far. But this will drag out because of that. There will be a trial. You know, it's not as closed as when, you know, the shooter is shot on the scene.
Yeah, well, definitely want to watch today. And as David Blevins was saying, that chilling footage really coming out of the event. And in the shadow of all that, the King and Queen are arriving in Washington today for something that was already shaping up to be a pretty contentious state visit. Well, the trip's been criticised in parts given the frayed relations between the US and UK, but was thrown into even greater question after the events of yesterday. Our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock, has been previewing the trip.
This is not the start they'd wanted to a trip already riddled with risk. The British ambassador to the US told us they're very confident all appropriate security measures are in place. Donald Trump described the king as brave. Both security teams are in close contact after Saturday's gun attack at a dinner attended by the president.
They would look carefully at where anyone could actually get near. Now, clearly, some of it is in the White House, but there are areas where, as I understand it, either the public and/or individuals will be allowed near. And the question has to arise: what security has been planned for? How are they going to implement it to ensure either a terrorist attack and/or somebody who's mentally ill or fixated, either with the president or the king, can be prevented?
So the focus returns to the king and what will be his most delicate and challenging state visit. Relations have hit rock bottom. Can the king's royal touch help heal the rift? The president certainly has a soft spot for the British monarchy.
He's King Charles, who's a great guy. He's a nice guy. He's a friend of mine. He's a great gentleman.
But contrast the president's praise for royalty with his pointed put-downs on our prime minister.
This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with. Well, he hasn't been supportive, and I think it's a big mistake. UK has been very, very uncooperative.
And it's off-the-cuff comments like this the palace will be wary of. Constitutionally, the king's politically neutral, so couldn't respond. But it would be embarrassing.
I think it'll be difficult if the war is still going on with Iran. I don't think there's any doubt about that. There is also a risk with the Trump administration, particularly I think Trump himself and his vice president, that they do express sort of sharp criticisms of various British institutions, not the monarchy.
The last time a British monarch set foot stateside was Queen Elizabeth in 2007. The president, George W. Bush. The political backdrop, far more friendly. Both sides say this visit is all about recognising and celebrating partnerships, but diplomatically it is a difficult deployment. With stepped-up security, prepare for a fascinating few days. The big question, will all of this stabilise a turbulent political situation? Laura Bundock, Sky News in Washington.
Well, Amelia's here with us, and I mean, we couldn't have imagined a more crazy final spanner to be thrown into the preparations of all of this.
Yeah, look, this will have had the Royals protection team incredibly concerned, but we have been reassured that things are going ahead as planned. This was confirmed by Buckingham Palace, but there will be some minor tweaks, they say, to the schedule. I mean, look, the King is, of course, a public figure, so it will be down to the Royal Protection Team to get him out in public. They will, of course, be reviewing the situation as the visit goes on. And both the Trump team and the Monarchs team have been in close contact over the last couple of weeks, and that will be something that, given what's happened over the last couple of days, will continue to be assessed. I think what's important is also looking at the relationship between Trump and the King. We know that the two of them have had, quite a good relationship, and I think this is going to be the biggest positive weapon that the UK government has in terms of repairing relations, certainly between the UK and the US. We know that Trump has been very, very positive when it comes to how the King has dealt with things like his cancer diagnosis, things like that. He's called him a great guy and a long-time friend. So how the two can get on will be an incredibly important part of the trip. In terms of the itinerary, it's going to be a packed 4-day trip. First of all, they'll be attending ceremonial events in Washington. They'll also be doing a commemoration of 9/11. There will also be a celebration of the 250th anniversary of US independence from Britain. And I think the centrepiece of this in a couple of days' time will be that the King will be addressing both houses of Congress as well. Trump, off the back of that, will also be making remarks. But I think the biggest point of this trip at this time, we've obviously had the shooting, but it comes at a very fractious time between the UK and the US government.
actually, for our audience, we had a little chuckle off screen when we remembered what Trump had said about Sir Keir Starmer, saying he's not Winston Churchill. That comment, you know, we all remember. He's been very critical of how Sir Keir Starmer's dealt with the US war in Iran as well, saying that they haven't done enough. He's been very critical of the UK government. This will be a trip that's a charm offensive, effectively, by the UK, and I think the soft power diplomacy that the monarchy yields will be incredibly important.
OK, Amanda, thank you. Amelia, thank you very much.
It's early, it's fine.
Sorry, it's so early. Oh, my goodness.
And by the way, later on, of course, this hour we'll be building up further to the state visit with the Countess of Sandwich, Julia Montague, about that visit by the King and Queen.
Right, let's talk Westminster, shall we? The Prime Minister is going to try to reset this morning, refocus on policy. Good luck with that, because it has been a couple of weeks of really bruising criticism over the Peter Mandelson vetting saga, and really I think things are just going to ratchet up again this week. Our political correspondent Rob Powell is here. So he's got an announcement on shoplifting, which is actually a really important issue, right, that a lot of people are going to care about, but it's going to be a make or break week.
Yeah, I think it's, on the shoplifting, he's sort of pointing to early progress, I think. Looking through it doesn't look like there's too much that's massively new in there. But he's making a speech later this morning where obviously he's trying to shift things back to the domestic agenda, which, as you say, is really, really important. It's a massive thing. But at the same time, there are going to be more developments coming this week on Keir Starmer's own position, which could affect that, and of course on the fallout from the Mandelson fiasco as well. Tomorrow you've got those two committee hearings, evidence coming from Philip Barton, the former permanent undersecretary at the Foreign Office before Ollie Robbins. That's important because Keir Starmer, of course, last week said there was no pressure on the Foreign Office to get the Mandelson clearance through. He seemed to be trying to kind of specify what he meant by that when he gave an interview yesterday to a Sunday newspaper. And he said he was talking about the everyday pressures, of government. When he said no pressure, he meant that there wasn't pressure to do this quickly or cut corners when it comes to clearances. But it's going to be interesting to see what Philip Barton has to say about that. And then, of course, Morgan McSweeney later on Tuesday as well. And then there's this possible issue of a referral or a vote to refer the Prime Minister to the Privileges Committee, which it's still a bit unclear at the moment exactly what the opposition parties are going to try and put forward. But you imagine it would be connected to allegations of misleading the House, potentially over saying due process was followed, potentially over this issue of saying no pressure existed. And a lot now rests, I guess, on what the Speaker wants to do. Talking to people in government this morning, they say, look, this is a decision for the Speaker now. There's a sort of assumption, I think, that if it does come to a vote, it could be tomorrow, which is the last day before the House breaks up ahead of the state opening of Parliament. And, Labour have a majority in the Commons, so they should be able to bat it away. But again, it's a test of the Prime Minister's authority over his own backbenchers. And if it starts to look a bit dicey, then, well, that tells us something about the grip he has on his own party.
Rob, great stuff. Thank you.
Well, let's try and answer a few of these questions, shall we? Because we can talk to the government next. The Environment Secretary, Emma Reynolds, joins us now. Good to have you with us.
Good morning.
First, I just wondered if we could get your reaction to the assassination attempt or threat that we saw towards Donald Trump. Given the security concerns, is it right for the King to be going to the US?
So it is right for the King to be going, and the Palace has obviously confirmed that the visit is going to go ahead. But obviously every measure will be taken to protect the King and the Queen. And obviously, our security services work very closely with the American security services with regard to these visits and in normal business as well. And every measure will be taken to protect him.
Is there a worry about this kind of thing happening here in the UK as well? Is there a rising threat for all politicians?
Well, I think at least in this country we have tighter gun laws. I think the fact that in the US you can get hold of a gun much more easily makes this kind of assassination attempt, more likely, unfortunately. It is very concerning how this individual was able to book a room in this hotel. I'm sure these will be the sorts of questions that will be looked into in quite some detail and get quite so close to the President of the United States. It is very, very concerning. And can I just say on this, the Prime Minister did speak to the President yesterday to offer him, you know, our solidarity and support, because it is obviously a very worrying time.
Yeah. It's a huge week for Keir Starmer. He gave an interview with the Sunday Times where he seemed to express some, I guess, frustration at the amount of time we're spending talking about the appointment of Peter Mandelson. He said, I understand why there are questions. I've answered, I don't know how many of them, but at the same time, I've got a huge amount of work to do on the war on two fronts. Are we spending too much time talking about the Mandelson appointment?
I do think it is frustrating for not only the Prime Minister but for government ministers like me. We want to be here talking to you about the fantastic things that we're doing as a government to help people with the cost of living pressure, some of the international big judgments that the Prime Minister has made not to be dragged into a war that didn't seem to have a plan. So, you know, the Prime Minister spent, I think, a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours in Parliament last Monday answering questions from MPs. So, you know, of course we must provide that information. We are providing all the information that has been asked of us through the humble address. We are being transparent about the process. We've said that the process needs to be reviewed and overhauled because it wasn't the right process. But yes, it is frustrating because we do want to be talking about the things the government are doing to help working people across the country.
Do you think spending too much time talking about it? Is it, I guess, like a Westminster bubble story?
I think we are spending a lot of time, too much time, talking about it. You know, I've been out in Milton Keynes recently in the local elections talking to people there, and not one single person during a 2-hour canvassing session mentioned this appointment to me.
They probably mentioned Keir Starmer's leadership, though, didn't they?
Well, that is obviously...
I guess it's tied in.
Well, I mean, look, we're having local elections. People are thinking about what's happening nationally, even though the decision they're making is a local one. And we are talking to people about what the government is doing to help them with the cost of living. But we're also talking to them about what their Labour Council, in some cases, is doing to help them too in the local area.
On Tuesday, there's expected to be a debate and a vote about whether to refer Keir Starmer to the Privileges Committee over claims he misled the House of Commons. I mean, obviously, this is what did for Boris Johnson, right? Should that vote go ahead?
Well, look, that is a question for the Speaker, and he will be looking at that this morning. But what I would say is that 10 days ago, we had Kemi Badenoch and other members of the opposition saying that the Prime Minister deliberately misled Parliament. He didn't, and that was categorically proven last week, and they've accepted that. He has not lied to Parliament. So I do think that the opposition, guess what, 10 days out from local elections and important elections in Scotland and Wales, are playing silly political games when we should be talking about the big issues at stake in the country here. If what's happening with the cost of living, what's happening internationally, what's the impact of the conflict on us, what we're doing as a government to prepare for all eventualities. I would rather be having that discussion with you. And I think that's a much more important discussion to have than the one about this appointment.
If it does go ahead, will it be treated as a confidence issue? In other words, will there be a win?
Look, I'm not going to speculate. It's for the Speaker to make the decision about whether it should go ahead. But what I would say is that there's a... Well, as I said, I'm not going to speculate about that. But what I would say, you mentioned Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson was found to have lied to Parliament. He said that there weren't any parties. He was at 5 of them.
Yeah, but that's
and then he was found by the police.
With respect, though, that's the whole point of having this debate, isn't it? To find out if Keir Starmer misled Parliament because he said that...
He clearly didn't. I mean, I don't know, you know... Well, I haven't
seen... Some people would say that, you know, this is why we've got to have the committee, because he seemed to say that Lord Mandelson then, Peter Mandelson, cleared all vetting when he didn't.
Well, he didn't know that Sir Ollie Robbins had gone against the recommendation of security vetting. How was he supposed to have known that if he hadn't been told? And by the way, it wasn't just at the time of making that judgment that Sir Ollie Robbins did that. It was after several times of asking. So Sir Chris Walmold was asked by the Prime Minister in September last year to do a review of the whole process of the appointment of Peter Mandelson. So Sir Ollie Robbins was asked then what happened, and he did not come forward with that information. So it's been categorically proven last week that Sir Keir Starmer didn't lie to Parliament.
Graham Stringer, the Labour MP, has said today, the Prime Minister is a busted flush. I just want him to leave in the way that enables the party to produce the best leader to get us out of this mess. I haven't spoken to any Labour MP who thinks he should fight the next election.
Well, I disagree with Graham Stringer, and I often do, and very politely too. But, you know, look...
So you think Keir Starmer should fight the next election?
Yes, I do. Sir Keir Starmer stood before the electorate in less than 2 years ago, in July 2024, he has secured one of the biggest majorities for Labour in our history, and he has got a mandate from the British people to change our country for the better, and that's what we're getting on and doing as a government.
There's one other story that I did want to talk to you about today, and it's about social media. The House of Lords voting again on whether it should be banned for under-16s. Now, the government has obviously said it will act. It said it's a matter of months. But the amendment seems to say they don't have to do anything for 3 years. I mean, it feels a little bit like this has just been kicked out into the long grass.
My colleague Liz Kendall is obviously working really hard on this issue. We know, and I've held an event in my own constituency with local head teachers about what they're doing in schools. We said last week, as you know, that we're going to ban phones in schools. There is a debate, obviously, and I have young children who don't have a phone yet, by the way. I'm hoping to restrict that for quite some time. There is a live debate about what's the best thing to do here, and we will be responding to that consultation, in due course. I understand that there are concerns in the Lords, there are concerns in the Commons as well. We've got to do what's best by our young people, and we've got to protect them from some of these. You see in the States what's happening, actually, is that these things are being taken to court. So we've got to, we will be responding to that consultation, and I understand.
Is it going to be years or months?
Well, as
this is a big difference.
Sure. It will not be years.
It will not be years.
It will not be
so
years.
It will be within months we're going to get a decision on about whether we should ban social media for under-16s.
Yes.
So this year it will be?
Well, as far as I'm aware, we are going to act relatively quickly. I cannot see that decision dragging into next year.
OK, because it feels to me that this is, I guess, some people's issue with Keir Starmer's government in some ways, that, he kind of waits for other people to tell him what to think. I mean, it's an instinct issue, isn't it, if you should ban social media?
Well, do I think it is right that the Prime Minister and our government consider all the evidence carefully before we come to a decision? Yes, I do.
What do you think on social media? Do you think it should be banned?
I think there are some very strong arguments about it, but I think we should also learn more from, and this is what I think Liz Kendall is doing, and you'll forgive me because I'm not looking at the detail of this day in, day out as she is, from what's happened in Australia, where actually young people are finding ways round the ban. So, we do have to introduce policies that work in practice as well. So we'll come back, and I'm sure you'll have Liz Kendall before you as well, so she can talk to you
we'll be asking her about that as well. You also talk about social media briefly, aren't you, as well? Social media, shoplifting.
Yes.
Early start. Goodness, need another coffee this morning. Shoplifting, and the Prime Minister, he's saying that we need tougher laws to sort it out.
Yeah, so the Prime Minister will be doing a speech today about bearing down on retail crime. The last government, the Conservatives, brought in this ridiculous £200 limit so that the police would only investigate shoplifting over £200. We have got rid of that in legislation. We're also making it an offence to assault a shop worker. We know that there's a lot of people out there working in supermarkets and other shops who are really at threat from this kind of violence. So we're really bearing down on retail crime, putting more police on the streets and dealing with this problem.
OK, Emma Reynolds, thank you very much indeed. Good to have you on the programme. Coming up next, we are going to be talking about our lead story today. Donald Trump, of course, the assassination attempt that we saw, speaking to someone who's worked in US defence and security agencies about the security threat that happened. Stay with us for that.
With respect, Minister, answer the question. It's you.
Hello and welcome. I'm Cathy Newman.
So could the outcome of these elections be manipulated? New me, new show, new furniture. Hard news needs a hard chair. I feel like I'm in therapy.
Oh, there's room for two on this one.
Do you think people will take me seriously with my feet up?
Sorry, madam, but we're closing now.
Oh, sorry. Sofa sorted. Let's get this show on the road.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking.
Thank you so much.
Trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to warn.
But I'm just going to put some body armor on.
I'm Yalda Hakim.
Welcome back. Let's talk more about the shooting in Washington late Saturday. Bob Ayers has served with a number of US defense and security agencies and joins us now. Very good morning to you, Bob. Thanks so much for joining us. Firstly, what do you make of this latest assassination threat on President Trump and just where we are to see a third in so many years?
Well, it wasn't an assassination threat. It was an assassination attempt. And the thing that we should all carry away from that is this took place in a hotel, and it took place in an operational, in-business hotel. It's almost impossible to secure the hotel itself from guests coming and going. One person signs in, but 3 people occupy the room. You can't check everybody that's in the room. You can't check them constantly because they're moving back and forth constantly. So what the security services did is they put a security cordon around the ballroom, which was a smaller area, but it was easier to control. So they put that cordon around the ballroom, and when the intruder tried to get in and gain access to the ballroom, he didn't make it. They stopped him, which is exactly what they're supposed to do. So, I mean, that's very good. One thing that I am curious about is we heard a lot of gunshots, and the security services were shooting at the suspect, but the suspect was not hit by any bullets. So that's not very good shooting, is it?
So it's an interesting point, I have to say. I didn't think of it that way. Can I ask, do you think we're seeing an increased number of threats towards Donald Trump, or is this something that all presidents face?
It's a very common occurrence. All presidents face threats. Most of them are just they're trivial. They're not really significant threats. A few are significant threats. But the problem with the security services is they have to check them all. You can't just dismiss one out of hand and say, that's probably not real, so we won't look into that. And more people have access to things like social media, so they're seeing more and more occurrences of some of these other events. So it appears that there's a great deal of threats going on, but it's not really substantially different. It's just we have better media coverage.
In terms of going back to the event itself, is it rare to have such a public event, which, albeit, as you said, there's a security cordon around it, but there's so many attendees with both the president and the vice president and many other senior cabinet members all there? Was that higher risk than it should have been or not?
Well, wasn't really a public event. I guess you could characterize it as a semi-public event. It was invitation only, and almost all of the people there knew each other because we're talking about a White House correspondents' meal, a party with White House correspondents. So this is a closed society. Now, is it unusual to have the president, the vice president, and other key governmental figures in one place? It's risky. There's no question about that. But the question that has to be addressed is, would the president and the other members of his staff willingly go along with being uninvited to an event like this? And the answer is probably no. They're going to be there because they want to be there. We have to remember that the security services, when it comes to talking to the president about security, they advise him. They don't say, you can't go to this, Mr. President, because Mr. President will say, yes, I can, get out of my way.
And what conversations will be going on about security when it comes to the visit of the King and Queen to the States?
This is going to be very interesting. I've given a little bit of time to this one. the U.S. security services, they train together, they practice together, they know each other. They're a very smooth, efficient, integrated machine. Now, the king is going to show up and he's going to bring some of his own close protection staff with him. These are really unknown to the U.S. security services. They may know them by name or by face, but they haven't trained together, they haven't worked together. And if something was to happen, there's a problem, possible problem, of a breakdown in communications or a breakdown in the way they respond to the threat. It could be messy. I don't like to think that you've got two groups of armed people that aren't really familiar with each other standing on either side of a ballroom looking at each other, hoping that nobody shoots the other person.
Of course, the other question to preempt that sort of prospect is that there shouldn't be any threats specifically to them, though.
You don't operate on the assumption there's no threat. You operate on the assumption there is a threat and you're there to prevent it. If you say, oh, there's no threat, don't worry about it. The king is going to fly into an airport. He's probably going to fly into Dulles or Andrews, but he's going to fly into an airport and he's going to go by motor vehicle from there to the White House or from there to the British Embassy, or he might even take a helicopter to go. And then from the embassy, he's going to go to the White House. So the king is going to be traveling back and forth around Washington, D.C., and you cannot, in any sort of unbelievable scenario, imagine that the king can be traveling back and forth across Washington, D.C. in motor vehicles and aircraft, and there's no threat to that. Of course there's a threat to it.
It's really interesting, Bob. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
You're more than welcome.
We've got a really difficult story next, but it is an important story because police are now warning that AI, artificial intelligence, is driving a new wave of child abuse. So they're saying that paedophiles can actually use AI to turn ordinary family photos into indecent images of children. Sky News has been given rare access inside Police Scotland, a specialist unit protecting kids as young as 1. Our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis has a story, and it does include some distressing images.
Inside one of Britain's largest police forces, there is a unit few ever see. One where crimes are not on the streets, but on screens. The youngest victim here, just 1 year old.
The vast majority of crime is going to be online. It's where people can go where they believe that they're not seen. So if they're not seen, they can't be found.
But behind every screen is a person, and behind some of those doors, a child who may be at risk.
You could go to an address with the expectation that, you know, somebody's been looking at indecent images of children, and you could go into that address and realise it's actually the children in the address.
Have you been in scenarios where you've gone in and there's frantic deletion going on?
There was particular one time where a laptop was snapped in half, but because we got in quick enough, we still got in it.
Paedophiles are weeded out by tech companies who detect suspicious material and send them to law enforcement worldwide.
And now police have invited us into a briefing ahead of this enforcement action. Let's go in and have a look.
Detectives believe a man has been communicating sexually online with a 12-year-old child. It's time to act.
Morning folks, thank you for attending this morning's briefing. The aim of today's operation is to protect children online and target individuals with a sexual interest in children.
We're going to stay a distance because investigators say that these cases can escalate very, very quickly. When it comes to digital evidence, every second matters because if a suspect realises that police, like the car that we're in just now, are outside, then they can be inside deleting vital evidence.
For legal and safeguarding reasons, we cannot reveal the address. Helena and Chris say identifying the property could expose innocent family inside and alert neighbours, which could compromise the operation.
How did that go then?
Well, we've managed to trace the suspect in the address. He's in there with one family member. We've carried out the warrant enforcement, which has resulted in a number of devices being seized and examined, and we've actually found evidence that that person was responsible for indecent communication.
But identifying offenders is only part of the work.
I do victim identification for online child sexual abuse and exploitation cases. You do learn to look around the image rather than the image content itself. So you're always sort of looking for things in the background, electrical sockets or maybe a piece of school uniform or something that could just give you a clue.
The vast majority of people watching and listening to this will think, you couldn't pay me $1 million to do the job that you do.
What's happened to the child has already happened. You can't undo that or unsee it, but you can hopefully put an end to it.
But police here say the next challenge is already emerging. Artificial intelligence, AI, technology capable of manipulating ordinary family photos into something deeply sinister.
It's absolutely a concern. It is an emerging threat. If you want to share family images on social media platforms, then make sure you know who you're sharing them with. I'm not saying don't share them, but just be mindful of who might be viewing them.
It is a hidden battle by a unit determined to expose it. A crime that skulks in the dark, but is happening closer than we think. Connor Gillis, Sky News.
Now, back to the state visit to the US, and the King and Queen arrive in Washington today for their state visit. The pair due to meet with President Trump and the First Lady as soon as this afternoon for what will be, of course, a 3 or 4 day visit. We're joined now by Julia Montague, the Countess of Sandwich. Julie, sorry, thank you so much for joining us. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
My first question on this, there's obviously lots of potential controversy reignited over the weekend, but how much is the American populace as a whole looking forward to this, even focused on it, compared to decades past when it was involving Queen Elizabeth?
Do you know, it's really an interesting question, and I don't think it's as hyped up as it would have been when Queen Elizabeth II came and visited. It's a different type of visit. I think now, you know, America is in a difficult situation. Let's agree with that without getting too political there. Obviously, the events that occurred a couple of nights ago, you know, very harrowing. And so that kind of, in one sense, has trumped that, you know, the potential assassination or whatever they're calling it, has kind of trumped and what this visit is about. But hopefully when, you know, the King and Queen Camilla, you know, land and they're there, that will help, I think, to give a little bit of space between what's happening in America now and an opportunity for this pageantry to really be on the center stage.
And it's something that Donald Trump, we know, is very fond of, right?
So fond. I mean, he's already said he thinks he's a fantastic guy. They have a great relationship, very different to what Trump says about Keir Starmer in many of his Truth Social tweets. But again, I think that this will be on a world stage and a moment for those images that we all really like to see. This strengthening of the US and the UK relationship, which many believe needs to be strengthened, particularly what's happened over the past year. So that will be interesting what we as the public see imagery coming out. But again, of course, the royal family is not political, but they do have this soft power that can sometimes open doors politically. And perhaps that's part of the visit as well.
Do you think it will all go to plan? I mean, I imagine the King will stick to the script. Will President Trump manage to keep to the script for 3 days?
I actually think he will. I think he is in awe, actually, of the royal family. He respects them incredibly, all of them, members of the royal family, bar maybe a couple living in California, but for the most part, the working royal family. So I think he will be on the absolute best behavior. And what he will want to showcase to the world is, again, the Washington, D.C. pageantry that they can put on for the King and Queen.
We know that Donald Trump loves the royal family. What do you think the King thinks of Donald Trump? I know they're supposed to not have any views, they're not supposed to be political, but everyone's got their own opinions, right?
Of course, and I'm sure that he has many opinions, but I suspect the King, like his late mother, will go into this with thinking duty first, duty first. You know, let's just make sure that we project to the world that our relationship is still strong. And we're celebrating, of course, the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the 250th anniversary, which at one time, 250 years ago, was quite divisive between the two countries, and now is a celebration.
We got over it.
Yeah, we got over it. It show that you can mend those battles over the years. What do you think if, hypothetically, which I don't think is that much of a hypothetical, behind closed doors, away from the cameras, if the King pushed a slight narrative to the president of, can you pair things up with the Prime Minister or whatever it might be. Do you think that the president would listen to that or not?
I do, and I think that that's a real possibility. We know that the king is definitely more outspoken than the late Queen Elizabeth ever was, and he sometimes can make a little bit of his political views known through some, I guess, soft speaking, if you like, and we all have to kind of read between the lines. But absolutely, I think that's part of the visit, to be perfectly honest. We know that Trump has a high respect for the king, says he's a fantastic person. And I think many people are expecting this behind the closed doors conversation to happen to sort of soften the relationship between Keir and the government over here and Donald Trump. Absolutely. So fingers crossed.
It's so interesting. I mean, I remember we talked to someone who'd written a book about the king and the Queen, saying that actually the thought about how the royal family would take Canada being independent kind of led Donald Trump to step back from some of the rhetoric. So we know, right, that he does respect their opinion.
Absolutely. So behind closed door conversations, I wouldn't be surprised if that definitely happened. Mm-hmm. And we'll also see this unfold real time because we know that Trump stays up late, well, we should say the wee hours of the morning, tweeting. So we will be expecting a lot of those Truth Social posts.
Julie, thanks so much for joining us. Great to speak to you.
Thanks for having me.
As you can see, Jackie has joined us around the table because we will be talking the sport after the break, including just unbelievable scenes at the London Marathon.
Unbelievable scenes, records flying all over the place, an amazing kind of, I don't know, I was there record sort of thing to see the, sub 2 hours broken. Also, I want to say hats off to Beth Rigby for running her second London Marathon. Amazing. Got plenty of goals for you as well. FA Cup weekends, important weekend in the Premier League, and also a very important weekend in Scotland in their title chase as well, which is so close there. So we'll look at all of those.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
With respect, Minister, answer the question. It's you. Hello and welcome, I'm Cathy Newman. So could the outcome of these elections be manipulated? New me, new show, new furniture. Hard news needs a hard chair. I feel like I'm in therapy. Oh, it's room for two on this one. Do you think people will take me seriously with my feet up?
Sorry, madam, but we're closing now.
Oh, sorry. Sofa sorted. Let's get this show on the road.
The Data and Forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on. They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week.
There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Okay, nothing to see here. Drama over. Full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
She's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts. The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth
Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Welcome back. As we were saying just before the break, London Marathon. Congratulations, and we really mean that to absolutely everyone involved.
59,000 runners. I mean, it's a very big marathon. But
putting all three of us to shame.
It's also very emotional when you watch it. You just see people really pushing themselves to their absolute limits. And speaking of which, you know, the fact that the winner of the marathon, Sebastian Solway, breaks the 2-hour record, which so many people who've run marathons before or sports scientists have looked and said, it's not possible to break 2 hours, and he ran it in 1:59.30, which I was trying to do the maths.
30 seconds to spare.
I think it's something like 4.55 minutes per mile for the entirety, and he got faster in the second half of the race, and he sprinted to the line, which I think is probably
unbelievable.
It's probably normal. I don't know if you've got any pictures of him, but he said afterwards, "It's a day to remember for me." When you talk about understatement, but what was really, really amazing as well was that Yomif Kjelsha, who came second, it was his first marathon. I mean, he's got an amazing range of running. He is a really good runner, make no mistake, but it was his first attempt at marathon, and he ran sub 2 hours as well.
Seriously? I missed this.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
first ever marathon.
Yes,
and ran that.
I mean, he is a runner. You know, he has had world records at other distances. I mean, he has got a great range of running. But I'll just give the marathon a go.
Oh. I don't know why I was going on this whole 2 hour thing.
I almost break the world record that, you know, no one thought was possible myself, but actually I've come second. But just incredible. And then there was a world record as well. Tigis Asifa, who won the women's race for the second time, also broke her own world record. But this sub 2 hour thing, I think that's got to go down in sports history as something really special. You know, Eliud Kipchoge, the great marathon runner, tried to do it. He did do it, but it was under really controlled conditions where he had a very flat track. He had multiple timekeepers. It wasn't a race. It was, I'm going to try and break this 2 hour barrier. And he did do it, but it didn't count because it's not a race.
What for all these amazing numbers yesterday, it was yesterday's, I mean, it was quite hot, wasn't it? You'd think it was almost not ideal.
It wasn't as hot as Saturday, so I think it was actually really good race conditions.
Was it?
I'd have thought so. Really not too hot, not too miserable. But, I mean,
must have been,
really
I guess.
I mean,
it was just the conditions that made it so easy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like a 4-minute mile, isn't it? Oh, that's a 4-minute mile. You know, Roger Bannister at the time, that was extraordinary. This is absolutely
I was saying to Sophie earlier as well, when you watch them going, that their cruising speed is like, A, it's unbelievably graceful. But B, it's a sprint. It's way faster than I would sprint. I mean, it's just kind of mad for 26 miles.
It's actually hard to wrap your head around it. Even trying to do it in the gym, you'd struggle, just even for a couple of miles.
For sure.
FA Cup weekend, it's quite an exciting weekend. Big question marks over Chelsea, the fact that they scrapped and fought and ran further than their opposition yesterday in their FA Cup semi-final against Leeds, and won with an early goal from Enzo Fernandez. Let's have a quick look at the winning goal, actually, for Chelsea. Enzo Fernandez on 23 minutes was the only goal of the match. It gives interim boss Callum McFarlane a precious win and an FA Cup final to look forward to against Manchester City. Who else? Afterwards, the Leeds manager, Daniel Farke, said, my players were a bit nervous and the occasion kind of got to them.
You do feel a bit for Liam Rosenior, though. I mean, like, ousted.
Yeah, well, this is
now they've got a cup final. It's like he could have still saved the day.
Well, this is the big argument. Did those players get him sacked by not running, not working for him? Very abject performance against Brighton, and it was something like 7 defeats in 8 matches. Did they deliberately not play for him so that he would go? And looking at yesterday, the way they really fought for that win, maybe that is true. In Scotland, an amazing title fight going on there. Hearts 3 points clear after what happened yesterday, and it was an extraordinary match. Hearts leading Celtic by 3 points. They lead Rangers by 4 points. We can have a look at the pictures, and it was looking really different until this happened. Blair Spittles in the 86th minute to give Hearts all 3 points. There are 4 games to go there, and everything to play for, and it is,
and all the neutrals went Hearts. fair to say?
Yes, because it's always a two-horse race in Scotland, and this year it's not. That was in the Edinburgh Derby, and it was just could be a really precious goal.
I love looking at the fans as well, just see what it means to them. And like you say, because there has been this dominance between the teams for so long, you just look at the face of these guys, they can barely believe what's happening.
Yeah, let me cry. Emotional.
Amazing.
Speaking of emotions, Coventry played Wrexham yesterday at home. It was a 3-1 win, and that was, after that they could lift the trophy of the championship. So great moments for those players. Coventry have had a really terrible time for 25 years, all different grounds, down as low as Division 2, and they're back in the Premier League after 25 years. And I've said this before, but I remember covering it as a reporter. Every year, I would go and speak to Dion Dublin about how you're going to rescue yourselves, how you're going to avoid the drop this year. And every year they managed to avoid the drop until they didn't 25 years ago, and now they're back in the Premier League. Really great scenes.
Welcome back.
Yeah, it's going to be great to have them in the Prem.
Action-packed sport there. Jackie, thanks so much. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with all of the day's top stories.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood has rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Good morning. It is 8 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Bridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Lots ahead.
Donald Trump shares his account of his latest assassination attempt and says he didn't make it easy for the Secret Service.
I started walking with him. I started walking, and they said, please go down on the floor. So I went down, and First Lady went down.
Against a backdrop of gunshots and heightened security, the King and Queen prepare for the first day of their state visit to Washington.
We're also speaking to Lisa Canavan, whose son Isaac died after taking part in a TikTok challenge, about whether the government is delaying a ban on social media for kids.
Plus, Sebastian Sawe makes history by becoming the first person ever to run a marathon in under 2 hours at a record-breaking race in London. A very good morning to you. We begin with the attack at the White House Correspondents' Dinner this weekend, the third assassination attempt against President Trump. The pictures are extraordinary. You can see Melania Trump reacting before the president. Her face says it all.
And here's the moment that the suspect, Cole Thomas Allen, races past security. He's armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and several lives. You can see him there. No one was killed. One officer was shot, but because he was wearing a bulletproof vest, he was only wounded.
The incident is being hailed by the president as a success for the Secret Service, but the suspect came pretty close. Questions are swirling about how this could happen and what was the motivation for the attack.
Well, Donald Trump spoke to CBS's 60 Minutes about the moment he was evacuated out of the room by the Secret Service.
It was a little bit me. I wanted to see what was happening, and I wasn't making it that easy for him. I wanted to see what was going on. And by that time, we started to realize maybe it was a bad problem, different kind of a problem, bad one, and different than what would be normal noise from a ballroom, which you hear all the time. And I was surrounded by great people, and I probably made them act a little bit more slowly. I said, wait a minute, let me see, wait a minute. So, I'm telling guys...
Just at that moment where it looks like you go sort of down with the service, you were telling them to wait?
Well, no, what happened is then I started walking with him. I started walking, and they said, please go down on the floor. So I went down, and First Lady went down also.
Our US correspondent David Blevins was in the ballroom along with several of our colleagues from the Washington Bureau. Here's his report.
It is not the scene setter they wanted for the King and Queen's state visit. The top table didn't know it yet, but the gunman was already in the building. You can hear the shots being fired. Oblivious to the danger, the host was showing them a trick when Secret Service stormed the stage. The Vice President pulled from his chair. The President and First Lady evacuated. Armed agents piled onto the platform, their weapons drawn to eliminate any threat. Donald Trump hit the floor, normal protocol to remove him from the line of sight.
The president down directly in front of me, and we just look at each other for about 2 seconds. And my mind, obviously, this is like a huge adrenaline, it's just like, oh no, are we about to die?
Members of the cabinet were whisked to safety, agents forming human shields around them. We took cover beneath the tables, my colleague Mark Stone sheltering next to me.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, or certainly shots, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
And this was the scene outside the ballroom, the suspect detained on the ground. The president posted this picture of his arrest and video of the terror beforehand. He'd breached the security cordon, armed with a shotgun, handgun, and several knives. One officer was shot during the altercation. His bulletproof vest saved his life. Safely back inside his bulletproof limo, they returned the president to the White House to reflect on what appears to have been the third attempt on his life.
I don't care how many people you have, how good they are. They can be the greatest people. You have the greatest security in history. If you have a whack job who's got a brain but it's a little bit distorted or a lot distorted, they can make trouble.
This is the suspect. He's 31-year-old Cole Allen from California. They've searched his home outside Los Angeles and charged him with firearms and assault offences. The White House says the president and senior members of his administration were the intended target. It was a breathtaking breach of security and has prompted Buckingham Palace to review arrangements around what will be the first British state visit to the United States in nearly 20 years. Expect a ring of steel around the royal couple, including here on Capitol Hill, where King Charles will address both houses of Congress later this week.
The first takeaway, the takeaway that it should be obvious, is that the system worked and that we stopped this suspect, and we stopped him as soon as he tried to do what he was trying to do. And the president was safe, his cabinet was safe, and every reporter and every member of the press and their guests were safe as well.
The Prime Minister has spoken to the President and First Lady on the phone. Keir Starmer said he was shocked by the scenes from the Washington Hilton overnight. Images now part of Trump's battle for a new ballroom at the White House. He may have dodged another bullet, but this president never misses an opportunity.
Well, David, of course, was taking cover underneath one of those tables when it all unfolded, and he described that moment to us.
1 minute I was chatting with my 4 colleagues. The next we were all lying on the floor beneath the table, sheltering in place and in the midst of an active shooter situation. Initially, it wasn't clear if the assailant was inside the ballroom or outside. It was clear that those heavily armed agents flooding the platform were more than prepared to eliminate anyone they perceived to be a threat. We all know that America has a long history of gun violence and politics, so when you are covering an event where the president is appearing in a public place, you're aware of the danger. But I don't think anything can prepare you for the moment when you hear what you think are gunshots and see the president, First Lady and Vice President being bundled away and become aware that you are surrounded by guns, fueling a few moments of sheer terror. We do now know, of course, that the assailant had already been apprehended just outside the door, and we've since learned that he had sent a 1,000-word document to 10 of his family and friends. In that, he apologised for what he was about to do. He didn't name President Trump directly, but did criticise his policies and talk about targeting his administration. He said he didn't expect to be forgiven for his actions, but signed off cold force, friendly federal assassin Allen. Those are chilling words indeed.
Well, in the shadow of all of that, of course, the King and Queen arrive in Washington today for what's shaping up to be a contentious state visit.
Well, there's been a lot of criticism already, even, of course, without the assassination attempt, given the fractured relationships between the US and the UK and, of course, the war that we've seen in the Middle East as well, and now security questions thrown into the mix as well. Our royal correspondent, Laura Bondock, reports.
This is not the start they'd wanted to a trip already riddled with risk. The British ambassador to the US told us they're very confident all appropriate security measures are in place. Donald Trump described the king as brave. Both security teams are in close contact after Saturday's gun attack at a dinner attended by the president.
They would look carefully at where anyone could actually get near. Now, clearly, some of it is in the White House, but there are areas where, as I understand it, either the public and or individuals will be allowed near. And the question has to arise, what security has been planned for? How are they going to implement it to ensure either a terrorist attack and or somebody who's mentally ill or fixated, either with the president or the king, can be prevented?
So the focus returns to the king and what will be his most delicate and challenging state visit. Relations have hit rock bottom. Can the king's royal touch help heal the rift? The president certainly has a soft spot for the British monarchy.
King Charles was a great guy. He's a nice guy. He's a friend of mine. He's a great gentleman.
But contrast the president's praise for royalty with his pointed put-downs on our prime minister.
This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with. Well, he hasn't been supportive, and I think it's a big mistake. UK has been very, very uncooperative.
And it's off-the-cuff comments like this the palace will be wary of. Constitutionally, the king's politically neutral, so couldn't respond. But it would be embarrassing.
I think it'll be difficult if the war is still going on with Iran. I don't think there's any doubt about that. There is also a risk with the Trump administration, particularly I think Trump himself and his vice president, that they do express sort of sharp criticisms of various British institutions, not the monarchy.
The last time a British monarch set foot stateside was Queen Elizabeth in 2007. The President, George W. Bush. The political backdrop, far more friendly. Both sides say this visit is all about recognising and celebrating partnerships, but diplomatically it is a difficult deployment. With stepped-up security, prepare for a fascinating few days. The big question, will all of this stabilise a turbulent political situation? Laura Bundock, Sky News in Washington.
Of course, lots more to come today and in the coming days during the King's state visit from the team on the ground there in the US.
We want to talk about social media next because a group of families have written an open letter to Keir Starmer. They're calling for him to act urgently on blocking children's access to social media. There's some concerns about delays in any proposed legislation.
It comes amid criticism that planned legislation would be delayed, as Sophie just said, with campaigners arguing that other countries have moved much faster to introduce similar restrictions.
Just to give you a bit of a sense of the scale of all this, these are some of the countries that have either brought in a social media ban or are in the process of introducing restrictions. Australia, of course, you can see there on your screen, first country to ban social media for under-16s. Others have legislated for a ban, including Greece, France, Spain, Austria, Denmark. So it is quite a long list.
It's also quite a good test of our flag knowledge. I'm glad we listed.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not strong on this.
We know all of them, but we'll let you have fun at home guessing. According to a January Ipsos poll, 72% of respondents would support a law requiring social media companies to ban under-16s from using their platform.
Well, we can bring now into the conversation Lisa Canavan, who's the mother of Isaac Canavan. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. We're very interested, of course, to get your thoughts on a social media ban, on if you think the government is doing enough. But first, I just wondered if you might be able to talk to us a little bit about Isaac, because it's a heartbreaking story, and I just wondered if you'd be able to share what happened to your son.
Yeah, firstly, thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, Isaac died March 2022 to be a perceived online challenge. He was a very happy boy, just highly inquisitive, a typical boy, just wanted to know the ins and outs of everything. And from that day, March the 9th, when he lost his life, our world's just changed forever. So my plight, like with many other bereaved families who've gone through such heartache, is to not want any other parent to go through what we're going through. And so the campaigning, we're not funded. This is all off our own back. We're just so passionate about getting this social media restriction for under-16s through, because, you know, look, that was a beautiful boy, and I'm dealing with that heartache now. So a duty of care is to actually stop any other parent going through this.
You really are unbelievably brave to be able to share that with us, and it's just heartbreaking. It really is to hear you talk about what you've had to endure. Do you in any way welcome the shift in the narrative on this, or do you look at this and say to the Prime Minister, stop delaying, stop playing us with some of your rhetoric?
Yeah, the latter. More delays causing more child harms, ruining their childhood, losing lives. You know, as you said earlier about all those other countries that have taken the enforcement to get this through. Why are we kicking the can down the road? Why are we putting out for consultations that I heard from yesterday could take up to 3 years to come to a conclusion? 3 years. We don't need that. We've got all the evidence. We have health professionals, we have parents, we have teachers are going through such tragedies from like day to day, what are they scared of? And you know, it's highly insulting, to be honest with you, that literally last week we stood at that door handing in a letter, and they voted it down, and then the very next day they got the big tech companies around the table. That is a kick in the teeth for us bereaved parents. We should be in that room, not the tech companies.
So you've written this open letter to Keir Starmer, joining together with other families who feel exactly the same way as you do. What are you hoping for? You're hoping for a response for the Prime Minister?
Yes, yeah. In a short answer, yes. I think he has a duty of care to get these parents in a room, look them in the eye, understand their stories, their passion, their plight to get this through, not on bits of paper and tech companies that got billions of pounds pushing around software that hopefully can detect harms. It's not working. It's just not working.
Lisa, what do you say to people who point to Australia, for example, and obviously 3 or 4 months into their social media ban for under-16s, and point to the fact that a lot of people are getting round it, that it's imperfect, at least in its initial implementation, and say we should take our time and learn from that before shaping our own type of similar approach?
Well, the simple fact is, this is very, very early days. No restriction works straight away. You know, we do learn as we go on. We had a very good analogy a couple of weeks ago from someone who said when the first the seat belts were introduced, not everybody was using their seatbelt, but then it's come the norm. You do put that seatbelt on. So the other thing where you get conflict to say, well, children can get around it. Of course, children are designed to be very inquisitive, and this is where the danger has come into social media, because children are highly inquisitive and lots of things come to them. They don't search for it as well. So with the ban that's going on in Australia, there's got, you know, a high percentage of a success. Let it roll out still, because they were on holiday, I think, for 3 months. So it hasn't had a true reflection on how the ban is working. And implementing something, doing something is better than not doing anything at all.
We just want to say thank you so much for being on the programme and for sharing the story of Isaac as well. You know, like Will said, it's absolutely heartbreaking to look at pictures of him, such a gorgeous little boy. And I'm sure he'd be incredibly proud of the campaign that you've been, you know, pursuing and the change that you're trying to drive in his memory as well.
Thank you.
Lisa Canavan joining us there. Now, the Prime Minister is looking to reset and refocus on policy today after weeks of bruising criticism over the Peter Mandelson vetting saga. Our political correspondent, Rob Powell, is here. Rob, I mean, it's going to be a hard job, isn't it, to refocus, because there's some very significant looming agenda items on the Mandelson vetting saga.
Yeah, it will be. It was interesting listening to Emma Reynolds, the minister you had on in the last hour, where she sort of said, we're talking about this too much. We should be talking about, you know, things that people really care about, and kind of made the point that she said, when I was out campaigning, no one brought up Peter Mandelson. That made me think of some comments that came from another Labour backbench MP, Sarah Champion, a week or two ago. And she said, I went out campaigning recently, and yeah, no one brought up Peter Mandelson. But even without knowing anything about the Mandelson saga, they still really, really disliked the Prime Minister, which is, you know, grim if you are in number 10. But I think it also indicates why the Mandelson stuff does actually matter, because it's just the latest thing after all of the other ones. And I think that's the reason why we're talking about it in such sort of existential terms for the PM. In terms of those developments, the main events, I think, come tomorrow. You've got 2 committee appearances. Philip Barton, former Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office, Permanent Under-Secretary, and that will be interesting because he will no doubt be asked about Keir Starmer's claim that no pressure was put on the FCO to push through the Mandelson vetting. Then you've got Morgan McSweeney tomorrow as well, giving evidence. I think it will be fascinating to really hear from this sort of figure that had moved in the shadows for so many months, coming out into the open and getting scrutiny for the first time. And then you've got the possibility of a motion, a debate and a vote maybe on referring the Prime Minister to the Privileges Committee that could, if it wanted to, if it gets that vote through, investigate him for potentially misleading the House. Now, that might not happen. It's up to the Speaker. The Speaker might decide there's no cause for it, so he might stand up in, 5-6 hours' time and say, I'm not going to even allow a motion. The whole thing goes away. Even if he does allow a motion, I think listening to Emma Reynolds earlier, you've got to think the government's going to be fighting it. This is what she said.
10 days ago, we had Kemi Badenoch and other members of the opposition saying that the Prime Minister deliberately misled Parliament. He didn't, and that was categorically proven last week, and they've accepted that. He has not lied to Parliament. So I do think that the opposition, guess what, 10 days out from local elections and important elections in Scotland and Wales, are playing silly political games when we should be talking about the big issues at stake in the country here. What's happening with the cost of living? What's happening internationally? What's the impact of the conflict on us? What we're doing as a government to prepare for all eventualities? I would rather be having that discussion with you. And I think that's a much more important discussion to have than the one about this appointment.
You get a sense of the frustration, don't you, from Emma Reynolds, but also in the Sunday Times interview with Keir Starmer as well, that, why are we spending all this time talking about Peter Mandelson? But, I mean, putting that argument aside, it feels like it's changed the reality of his premiership, right, when it comes to, I guess, the wolves circling.
I think as well, it does remind me of the kind of the final weeks and months of Boris Johnson, and when we were talking about, the thing that sort of did for him wasn't so much Partygate. I mean, it was the accumulation of all of it, but it was that Christopher Pincher row. And actually, I think with that, what finished him off with his cabinet and with ministers, it wasn't necessarily the facts around the Pincher affair, like grotesque as they were. It was that it pointed to something else that they were worried about in Boris Johnson. In this case, it was around his honesty. And I think the Mandelson fiasco is the same for Keir Starmer. Not so much about his honesty, which is why I kind of think the Privileges Committee thing is maybe a bit of a red herring. I think the thing that worries senior people in Labour and MPs around Mandelson is not about honesty, it's about control. It's about whether the Prime Minister is engaged enough in all of this or whether he is just being told to do things, whether he is a passenger in this government rather than a driver. I think it illustrates that, and that is why we're talking about it.
I think that's completely right. And actually, when you get Keir Starmer and people within his cabinet saying, well, actually, his account was completely proved by Ollie Robbins, it's slightly missing the point because the whole thing is people think, why hasn't he got a grip? Why isn't he more involved? Why is there, I guess, a bit of a vacuum?
It's also why I think Emma Reynolds has got a point when she says Kemi Badenoch overplayed her hand a little bit on this. Like, I remember speaking to her a week or two ago, and she said, he's lying, he's untrustworthy, he's unfit to be holding the office that he occupies. She was trying to do Keir Starmer to Boris Johnson back to Keir Starmer. And I came away thinking, I think she might have overcooked this a bit because, the polling does show people find him untrustworthy, but I think the thing that worries MPs isn't necessarily around his honesty. I think they generally accept that, he's someone that is a pretty honest guy. It's about his political instincts and his grit.
The only caveat to all of that is the extent to which, and certainly when you read the Sunday Times piece yesterday and you kind of almost want to see it in person and get to witness if there's real zeal behind it or not, but is he's still wanting to fight and fight till the last, which is a sort of sentiment shift that maybe 2 or 3 months ago people weren't sure was there. And if that's the case, it does change, with quite complicated dynamics in the Labour Party, change the likelihood of something happening quickly, at least.
Yeah, I think you're right. The kind of calculation I'd always thought around Keir Starmer was that he wasn't like Boris Johnson because he didn't have that just like insatiable desperation to stay as Prime Minister. That actually, when you look back to what he's talked about after the Hartlepool by-election, what was that, 5 years ago or so now, when he said, I thought about resigning because I thought if there was someone that could do a better job than me, I should let them do it. I thought, well, if you calculate that now, then by most measures, he's probably gone, right?
He'd be dreaming of a situation that they had after Hartlepool now, right?
But maybe that, I don't know, maybe Keir Starmer's changed since then.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Rob, great stuff. Thanks so much. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be speaking to a man who spent more than 20 years in the Secret Service in the US, protecting Presidents Bush and Obama, to talk about the weekend's events in the US.
With respect, Minister, answer the question.
It's you. Hello and welcome, I'm Cathy Newman. So could the outcome of these elections be manipulated? New me, new show, new furniture. Hard news needs a hard chair. I feel like I'm in therapy. Oh, there's room for two on this one. Do you think people will take me seriously with my feet up?
Sorry, madam, but we're closing now.
Oh, sorry. Sofa sorted. Let's get this show on the road.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter.
I began by asking,
thank you so much,
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story? I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Welcome back. Let's return now to the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We're joined by Matt Chevreau, who spent more than 20 years with the Secret Service protecting former Presidents George Bush and Barack Obama. Thanks so much for joining us, Matt. My first question on this is, was this a success by the US security services or a failure?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Wilford. Appreciate the opportunity. This is absolutely a success when you look at it. The Secret Service's protective methodology worked here. They have a layered security approach, and this was one instance where it worked. The attacker was not successful. He was able to get through the initial line, but as we know, he wasn't able to enter the event. He did not make it into do any harm to the president, the vice president, or any of the other attendees at the event.
I'm really interested. We're just watching some of this footage of it, given that you've been in the line of fire, so to speak, doing this sort of work. How is it that two of Vice President Vance's agents ran on first, picked him up, forced him out of the room in a way that took about 15, 20, 30 seconds for the same to happen to President Trump?
Well, so what a lot of people don't understand is there's a lot of communication going on, and in the initial time when something like this is happening, you're listening, you're taking direction from folks that are and trying to make the best decisions possible. Again, you don't want to rush a president out of a room, or any protectee for that matter, out of a room, not knowing exactly where the safe place is for them to go. So in this case, it looks like they chose to have him go down to the ground. wait, assess, and then move them appropriately.
In terms of just the volume there of protected individuals, both up on that raised stage, but also in the room, would that have made it a particularly complicated process to go through the evacuation? And what's your sort of assessment of how risky it is to have so many in one room like that?
Well, so each detail is in charge of creating their own evacuation plan for their protectees. So in this case, everybody that had a protective detail there would have had prior knowledge of what they were going to do should something happen. In this case, I'll speak, to what I saw regarding the president, the vice president. That's where I have my experience from. Again, if you noticed, the vice president went off in one direction and the president went off in a different direction. That's just to make sure that they both have a safe route of evacuation when necessary.
In terms of the threat level to President Trump, is it unprecedentedly high in your assessment?
Well, I'll answer it in this case in this way. To have 3 different attempts in such a short period of time, relative, it is definitely unprecedented in modern times. So I'll let the viewers make their own assessment of that around that. But definitely, it is something that we haven't seen.
And just finally, in terms of the King and Queen's visit and arrival to the US, do you think that is something they should be reconsidering? I'm sure there were very big security plans in place anyway. Should they be reconsidering that all and elevating the scale of protection, or not necessarily?
Well, the plans and preparations that have been going on for the King's visit have been going on for some time. And they will rise to a level of security that is consistent with the president. I wouldn't have any concern with them coming right now. The way the Secret Service does their protection, it's the same over and over again. When we consider that there will be, another high-level protectee there, yes, that's taken into consideration. But they do the same protective methodology every time they do a visit. What they will be concerned with this time is, say, copycat attackers, if you will, somebody trying to use what happened in the last few days as a sounding board or as some kind of a motivation to maybe carry out their own attack. So they will be monitoring. They will be checking intelligence just to see if there's any kind of chatter or any other groups or individuals that they may already know about, or ones that they may not know about, who could be using this as a jumping off point to carry out their own attack.
Matt, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Let's move now to the situation in the Middle East, and specifically in Lebanon, because officials there say that 14 people have been killed after Israel targeted Hezbollah fighters in strikes on Sunday. Let's go live to Jerusalem. Our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons. Adam, great to have you with us as ever. Why don't we start then on Lebanon? What is the latest?
Yeah, this attack yesterday by Israel seems to have killed 14 and injured another 37. So that is more than 50 casualties in that attack. That is the worst impact since the start of the, and we're going to use the word ceasefire here, between Israel and Lebanon. But it now takes the number of people killed in Lebanon to over 2,500 since hostilities began. Now, Israel will maintain that it has to keep carrying out these attacks because it has been the subject of repeated attacks from Hezbollah. And certainly we've seen plenty of images of Hezbollah rockets and drones being fired towards Israel and towards Israeli forces. But I think this word ceasefire becomes sort of ever more difficult to justify at a time when both sides, Hezbollah and the Israeli military, are continuing to attack each other. I think when you think of the word ceasefire, you generally think of, the end of world wars, where officers blew whistles and suddenly there was silence. Well, the guns and the weapons, rockets, are not silent in Lebanon at all, and there are those within the Israeli government, those certainly within the military, who think that the onus, the momentum now is less towards a cessation of hostilities, more towards a resumption. And as so often at the moment, the question there may depend on the politics of Israel and the politics of the United States. Is Donald Trump really going to be happy for Israel to attack southern Lebanon again at a time when he is trying to come up with some kind of peace deal, either with Iran or long-term, to solve this question of how to bring peace to Lebanon that has defeated so many people over so many decades?
Adam, you mentioned there the peace talks. I just wondered if you might be able to give us an update this morning on how they are progressing. What is the latest?
The latest is that there is plenty of movement, but no actual resumption of talks. Abbas Araghchi, the Iranian foreign minister, was briefly in Islamabad. He's gone to Amman and he's now gone to Russia, to St. Petersburg, to meet with the Russians. So he is doing this whistle-stop tour, effectively to talk to allies. The United States, we had this curious situation where at one point it looked like Donald Trump said J.D. Vance was on a plane, then it turned out he was still in Washington. Then he said that his two familiar negotiators, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, were going out to Islamabad. Then it turned out that they weren't, and then Donald Trump said it was a waste of time sending them. So there's been a suggestion that Iran has put forward a peace deal that would involve opening the Strait of Hormuz but delaying any talks about nuclear enrichment, which on the face of it would seem to just take everybody back to where we started before there was a war, which would raise questions about what was the point of all of this. And so in terms of cold, hard facts, at the moment, there are no peace talks. There are the expectation that the leaders of Lebanon and Israel will come to Washington. That hasn't been fixed yet. There's an expectation that something more will happen with Iran, and it has to. But at the moment, again, nothing is fixed. So we are in a holding pattern, waiting for the United States, I suppose, to make another move. But clearly, right now, the White House has other things on its mind.
Adam, great stuff. Thanks so much for that. And by the way, just to sum up what this has done for oil prices, up again 2.5% today, $108 a barrel on Brent. We were 90 this time last week on the good news. We pulled back. We slowly sort of edged up during the course of the week, but back well above 100 now, based on the fact that, of course, the Strait is showing no signs of reopening anytime soon.
Now, the family of Virginia Giuffre, one of the most prominent survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse, have criticised the state visit. They said it's a missed opportunity. Her family have told Sky News the King should be meeting with Epstein survivors while he's there. Here's Sky's James Matthews.
King Charles will be here in Washington next week, but not everybody is celebrating. The week of his arrival coincides with an anniversary. It's a year since Virginia Giuffre took her own life. She's the woman who accused the former Prince Andrew of sexually abusing her, aged 17, when she was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew denied it, but he did settle a civil lawsuit that Virginia brought against him. Her family and other survivors of abuse by Jeffrey Epstein have gathered here in Washington to honour her memory. When the King arrives, some survivors want to meet him, but he has said no.
This is a missed opportunity to him because we are 5 minutes away from you. I will be lobbying in the Capitol Hill, in the Capitol building, on that same day that you'll be arriving. And it's a missed opportunity because even if it's not to go into depths, it means something to look into a survivor's eyes and say, I promise to give you a fair and thorough investigation in this. And that does not matter if it's my brother or if it's other perpetrators out there. I, the King of England, stand with survivors.
We were hoping that just that one thread of acknowledgement, it would set an example to our own president and to the rest of the leadership in the world that we need to take this seriously.
When the monarch meets the president, there will be lavish spectacle. There will also be the shadow of Epstein. The child sex trafficker was a friend to one man and also to the brother of the other. Donald Trump and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor deny knowledge of Epstein's criminal activity or any involvement in it. Buckingham Palace, it says the King and Queen won't be able to meet with survivors in case anything arises from such a meeting that would impact on or prejudice investigations and any resulting legal action. The King in the past has spoken of his deepest concern at events involving his brother and has said that he supports an investigation.
James Matthews reporting for us there. Coming up, we are going to be talking to the leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski. He's coming up in just a few short moments' time.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
With respect, Minister, answer the question. It's you.
Hello and welcome, I'm Cathy Newman. So could the outcome of these elections be manipulated? New me, new show, new furniture. Hard news needs a hard chair. I feel like I'm in therapy. Oh, there's room for two on this one. Do you think people will take me seriously with my feet up?
Sorry, madam, but we're closing now.
Oh, sorry. Sofa sorted, let's get this show on the road.
The Data and Forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on. They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Ooh. OK, nothing to see here, drama over, full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
Because she's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts. The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Hello again. Well, of course, on the programme today, we have been focusing on the assassination attempt in front of Donald Trump, towards Donald Trump. He has been speaking to CBS News' 60 Minutes programme last night. A few kind of lines coming out of that. He said that the King will be very safe, in his words, on the US trip. But that, of course, will be a big focus today as that state visit gears up. Absolutely. Of course, 3 days worth of events to unfold, and our full team coverage from the US as the King and Queen begin their official state visit today. We can talk now to the leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, who joins us now from Salford. Good to have you with us. Thank you very much for being with us. Donald Trump faced his third assassination threat on Saturday night. I just wondered if we could start off by getting your reaction to that.
Yeah, we need to condemn political violence. It's scary, the democratic space where people are increasingly angry and politicians are under threat. Now, it won't be a surprise to you know that I disagree with much of what Donald Trump says, but it is important that I think politicians from all parties and all perspectives all condemn political violence, because ultimately we need to make sure that everyone's safe to be able to disagree.
So I guess you're saying that no matter what the policy of someone, political violence can never be justified. Is that the argument?
That's right. I'm a Democrat, as in I believe in democratic politics. I don't believe in threatening people, and I certainly don't believe in violence. And I think it's important that we condemn this, and that's the end of the story, really.
I'm keen to get a bit of a sense about what a green government could look like, and really look at some of your kind of policies in a bit more detail, because look, you know, if you look at the polls, it is a possibility that you could be involved in some kind of government in the future, right? You've got an announcement today about buses, and I am keen to talk about that, because I always think it is, you know, the most used form of public transport, but you wouldn't necessarily know that given the amount of coverage it gets, right?
Right, and it costs us up to £23 billion to the economy for poor connectivity. When you speak to people, particularly in rural communities, sometimes you say you might get a bus every few hours, but actually it's every few days. And so it's really important people have access to an affordable bus that runs frequently, because they might want to visit a loved one, go to work, or run an errand. So it's vital that we invest in our buses. We also talked about free bus travel for under 22s. Now, if this sounds like a radical idea, I was in Glasgow just a couple of days ago, where it was a Scottish Green government in coalition with the SNP who brought in free bus travel for the under 22s, and we've seen what it does there. They're already talking about extending that to all people using buses. The main thing we're announcing, though, today is to bring buses into public control. So actually, when you get green councils or green councillors, they're there to make sure that the routes are efficient, that we're capping fares so that they're cheaper, and also that they're just frequent and effective.
You want to legalise drugs, so one of the key policies, I think, for the Green Party. And look, you know, if you look at organised crime, you can see the arguments in favour of it. But I guess my question is about how it is controlled. Cannabis, for example, could we see a situation where, like, you know, when you go to Amsterdam, you see cannabis shops kind of freely on a high street?
So we want to legalise and regulate drugs, and the bit why and regulate is really important is because the so-called war on drugs has clearly failed over and over again. In fact, we have the highest drug deaths in Europe, and for the past 14 years, every single year, drug deaths has increased. So the war on drugs isn't working, and so the question has to be, what do you do about it? Now, there will be some drugs, like cannabis, like in Amsterdam, where it might be that a cannabis cafe or a social club is appropriate. With harder or so-called more dangerous drugs, that clearly is not the plan here, and it's often been misrepresented by Labour. With a more dangerous drug, we want to make sure those are in the...
Just to be super clear, that, so, you know, you're not talking about, like, being able to go and have a cocaine cafe, but a cannabis cafe on a high street could be a reality under the Green Party.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be on a high street. There'd be a whole conversation there about planning and what the community wants. But with a harder drug, that's about making sure it's in the hands of a medical health professional. And if someone has a dangerous, addictive relationship to drugs, do we allow them to buy those drugs on an illegal market or down a street alley? Or actually, do we say a pharmacist?
On the cannabis, and I know how it would have to go through local planning, but in theory, you could buy cannabis on a high street, you could have a cannabis cafe on a high street.
If that's what a community agreed to, and obviously it's going to be different on different communities. And so that's not the number one thing we're pushing at this local election. I know you did say it was one of our kind of key pledges or manifestos, and I don't think that's true. Actually, the key thing is to end rip-off Britain, to end the toxic combination of low wages and high bills. But I do accept it is something that we will be talking about when we get to a general election, so it's legitimate to ask about it.
The other thing, because I just think that the drugs policy is something that I think is genuinely interesting, right? And so I'm just keen to go through a little bit more on this, if I may. Specifically about GHB, otherwise known as a date rape drug, right? On your website, because you want to legalise all drugs, the assumption is that drugs like Rohypnol, like GHB in particular, may be legalised. Rape Crisis website says that drugs that have been known for their use by people who commit spiking in order to rape or sexually assault someone includes Rohypnol or GHB. So, under your plans, could GHB, the purchase of GHB, be legalised?
This would be unlikely to be a drug that we would want people to be buying or even to be legal other than if someone had some sort of addiction to it. I would point out, though, that people already spike drinks in alcohol, for instance. People already give people alcohol against their will, and these things are already illegal, and there's no way that's changing. You'd be very surprised, and I wouldn't come on your programme and say what we're legalising is the spiking of someone's drink. That's abhorrent, needs to stay illegal, and in fact I think we actually need to look at how do we make sure that we're preventing that and be taking that more seriously. I know stories just in my personal life, but I know everyone usually knows someone or a friend who's experienced how horrific a spiking is, and that clearly needs to be stopped. Again though, that's still going on right now, even when the drug is illegal. So what I would say is the current approach isn't working. We need to have a much more holistic approach where people feed into this, but most of all medical health professionals and people engaged in community safety to actually make sure that we have a reasonable evidence-based approach to how we look at drugs, rather than what happens right now, which is just for Wild West.
I was intrigued that you've never drunk yourself. Does that mean you've never tried any alcohol?
I've never tried any alcohol at all. I think growing up, as you know, I'm a gay man. And when there wasn't kind of an LGBT community centre to go to, I grew up in Salford in Manchester, where I'm speaking to you from right now. And so the place I would often go when I was 15, 16 years old was Canal Street. That's an inappropriate place, I think, for young people to be at that age. I already felt like I was doing one naughty thing, I suppose, by being in pubs and clubs. So I was in there drinking tap water most of the time and having a dance and meeting people. So I grew up in the club scene, never drinking. And so then when I turned 18, I think I was just like, it's fine, I don't need to drink anymore. I want to say all of that, though, that, you know, I'm not being the fun police. If people want to have a drink, totally fine for them to have a drink. I've just never personally done it.
Yeah, like you say, it's, you know, you found other ways of having a good time. Do you agree with your Green MP, Hannah Gorton, by the way, that there's too much boozing in Parliament? Nigel Farage has come out to say that, you know, the Green Party want to legalise drugs but crack down on a lunchtime drink.
Hannah Spencer, although I like Hannah Gorton, if we're going to move the constituency. No, it's totally fine. I totally agree with Hannah. This isn't something that me and the MPs have particularly had a discussion about. I think it was an off-the-cuff remark where she said that people who are about to vote shouldn't drink alcohol first. And it's been pretty shocking to me to see Nigel Farage and, to be frank, Labour MPs say that people work 15-hour days, so they should be able to have a drink before they vote. I know lots of people who work 15-hour days, cleaners, teachers, people who are doing, you know, work in the real economy. The idea to them that they would have a drink when they go back to work, they'd be fired for that, and so they should. And so the idea that we have this toxic drinking culture in Westminster where people can go for a drink and then make decisions on 69 million people's lives, crucial decisions to their lives, and not be doing that sober. I think to many people that seems strange, so I'm really pleased that Hannah, I think accidentally, you know, she was just answering a question, but has brought this centre stage into the public conversation, because I think to lots of the public it will seem very strange that MPs are allowed to get drunk and then vote. That's outrageous.
Just finally, it's a big week, of course, for Keir Starmer, with the Mandelson saga continuing, of course. You've always said that there would be no kind of Green Labour agreement at an election if it's Keir Starmer running the Labour Party. What if it was, you know, Andy Burnham or Angela Rayner? Would that lead to a different answer to that question?
As you know, I always want to directly answer questions to you, Sophie. I am going to have to put a caveat there that say it's almost impossible to know, because until we know who that leader is, what their policy platform is, and how they behave as Prime Minister and how they treat the Green Party, and more importantly, the policies we care about, it's very difficult to judge. That being said, I do like to answer a question. It's no secret that Andy Burnham and Angela Rayner would be much closer to my politics than Keir Starmer are. I think they're people who do care about tackling the cost of living crisis and do care about people in this country. I still have reservations about their policies. They're still in the Labour Party, and my question would be, why have they been so quiet while the Labour Party and the Labour government have done some pretty egregious things, both in this country and around the world? But I do think it'd be a significant improvement to remove Starmer and make sure that the party was leaning more towards the left, more towards a progressive direction, and more towards ending rip-off Britain.
OK, Zach Polanski, good to speak to you, as always. Thank you for being on the programme today.
Thanks so much.
The Green Party leader there talking to Sophie. We do want to pivot now and talk a little bit of sport. Jackie's here with that, and some great football over the weekend, but the headline is the London Marathon.
Absolutely. I mean, it was just groundbreaking, the fact that not one, but two men broke the 2-hour mark. I mean, it was something that I think a lot of athletes thought this is not actually possible in race conditions, but Two of them did it at the London Marathon yesterday. So Sebastian Solway ran it in 1 minute 59:30.
What, 1 hour? Not 1 minute?
Not 1 hour. 1 minute. Yeah, that would be fast. Which is, I mean, that's basically a sprint, right? All the way around there, 26.2 miles. The funniest thing was, though, that Yomif Kajelcha came second, also broke the 2 hour mark in his first ever marathon. I mean, the guys held records at the indoor mile, and they just thought, I'll try the marathon. And he did.
Unbelievable.
First attempt, he actually breaks the world record as well and doesn't even win the race. Extraordinary. We should also talk about Chelsea yesterday because they fought, they scrapped, they did something that I think a lot of people didn't think it was possible to do. This is the winning goal. Enzo Fernandez. They actually, for the first time in a very long time, outran their opponent. There was real fight there. You know, after 7 defeats in 8, I think a lot of people were thinking, did these players deliberately get their manager the sack?
Yeah, you definitely feel a bit for Liam Messina, don't you?
Yeah, feel for him. You know, sacked last week. You know, Callum McFarlane has got a final now to look forward to, and so have the fans. And they might, you know, drag something out of a very desperate season. But why didn't they show that fight before?
Yeah, I mean, I think the players definitely changed their tone, didn't they? But equally, I guess as part of leadership is you've got to bring the people with you, and he failed to do that.
Yeah, he didn't do that. We should quickly look at Scotland as well. What a title race is going on there. It is still 3 teams involved. Hearts very much in the driving seat at the top, having beaten 9-man Hibs with a last-minute, well, not last-minute, but 86-minute goal there from Blair Spittles to keep them in the driving seats. But it's all to play for there.
Yeah, that roar that went up when the goal went in, magnificent stuff.
We'll be right back.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood has rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
It's Sophie and Wilf, good morning from both of us. A lot ahead.
President Trump shares his account of his latest assassination attempt and says he didn't make it easy for the Secret Service.
I started walking with them. I started walking, and they said, please go down on the floor. So I went down, and First Lady went down.
A backdrop of gunshots and heightened security, the King and Queen prepare for the first day of their state visit to Washington.
We'll hear from our team and from royal commentator Alistair Bruce.
Plus, an incredible moment in sporting history. Sebastian Solway becomes the first person ever to run a marathon in under 2 hours. He did it in London. Good morning. Thank you for being with us today as well. We begin with the attack at the White House Correspondents' Dinner this weekend. It's the third assassination attempt against President Donald Trump.
The pictures are extraordinary. You can see Melania Trump reacting here before the president does, her face telling it all.
And we can also see the moment that the suspect, Cole Thomas Allen, races past security, all quiet for a moment, and then you'll see him there. He's armed with a shotgun, a handgun and several knives. Nobody was killed. One officer shot, but he was protected by his bulletproof vest.
The incident is being hailed by the president as a success for the Secret Service, but the suspect came pretty close, and questions therefore swirling about whether he should have been stopped earlier and what his motivation was.
Well, Donald Trump spoke to CBS's 60 Minutes about the moment he was evacuated by the Secret Service.
It was a little bit me. I wanted to see what was happening, and I wasn't making it that easy for him. I wanted to see what was going on. And by that time, we started to realize maybe it was a bad problem, different kind of a problem, bad one, and different than what would be normal noise from a ballroom, which you hear all the time. And I was surrounded by great people, and I probably made them act a little bit more slowly. I said, wait a minute, let me see, wait a minute. So, you know, I'm telling guys...
Just at that moment where it looks like you go sort of down with the service, you were telling them to wait?
Well, I know what happened is then I started walking with them. I started walking, and they said, please go down on the floor. So I went down, and First Lady went down also.
Our US correspondent David Blevins was in the ballroom along with several of our colleagues from Washington, and here's his report.
It is not the scene setter they wanted for the King and Queen's state visit. The top table didn't know it yet, but the gunman was already in the building. You can hear the shots being fired. Oblivious to the danger, the host was showing them a trick when Secret Service stormed the stage. The Vice President pulled from his chair. The President and First Lady evacuated. Armed agents piled onto the platform, their weapons drawn to eliminate any threat. Donald Trump hit the floor, normal protocol to remove him from the line of sight.
The president down directly in front of me, and we just look at each other for about 2 seconds. And my mind, obviously, this is like a huge adrenaline, just like, oh no, are we about to die?
Members of the cabinet were whisked to safety, agents forming human shields around them. We took cover beneath the tables, my colleague Mark Stone sheltering next to me.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, or certainly shots, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
And this was the scene outside the ballroom, the suspect detained on the ground. The president posted this picture of his arrest and video of the terror beforehand. He'd breached the security cordon, armed with a shotgun, handgun and several knives. One officer was shot during the altercation. His bulletproof vest saved his life. Safely back inside his bulletproof limo, they returned the president to the White House to reflect on what appears to have been the third attempt on his life.
I don't care how many people you have, how good they are. They can be the greatest people. You have the greatest security in history. If you have a whack job who's got a brain, but it's a little bit distorted or a lot distorted, they can make trouble.
This is the suspect. He's 31-year-old Cole Allen from California. They've searched his home outside Los Angeles and charged him with firearms and assault offences. The White House says the president and senior members of his administration were the intended target. It was a breathtaking breach of security and has prompted Buckingham Palace to review arrangements around what will be the first British state visit to the United States in nearly 20 years. Expect a ring of steel around the royal couple, including here on Capitol Hill, where King Charles will address both houses of Congress later this week.
The first takeaway, the takeaway that it should be obvious, is that the system worked and that we stopped this suspect, that we stopped him as soon as he tried to do what he was trying to do. And the president was safe, his cabinet was safe, and every reporter and every member of the press and their guests were safe as well.
The Prime Minister has spoken to the President and First Lady on the phone. Keir Starmer said he was shocked by the scenes from the Washington Hilton overnight. Images now part of Trump's battle for a new ballroom at the White House. He may have dodged another bullet, but this president never misses an opportunity.
Let's hear more from David Blevins.
1 minute I was chatting with my 4 colleagues, the next we were all lying on the floor beneath the table, sheltering in place and in the midst of an active shooter situation. Initially it wasn't clear if the assailant was inside the ballroom or outside. It was clear that those heavily armed agents flooding the platform were more than prepared to eliminate anyone they perceived to be a threat. We all know that America has a long history of gun violence and politics. So when you are covering an event where the president is appearing in a public place, you're aware of the danger. But I don't think anything can prepare you for the moment when you hear what you think are gunshots and see the president, First Lady and Vice President being bundled away and become aware that you are surrounded by guns, fueling a few moments of sheer terror. We do now know, of course, that the assailant had already been apprehended just outside the door, and we've since learned that he had sent a 1,000-word document to 10 of his family and friends. In that, he apologised for what he was about to do. He didn't name President Trump directly, but did criticise his policies and talk about targeting his administration. He said he didn't expect to be forgiven for his actions, but signed off cold force, friendly federal assassin Allen. Those are chilling words indeed.
Certainly are. David Blevins there for us. Well, of course, all of this taking place ahead of the King and Queen arriving in Washington today for what's shaping up to be a potentially contentious state visit.
So there has been criticism, of course, given the backdrop of the war in Iran and also the relationship between the US and UK. Donald Trump, of course, not really holding back, should we say, on this criticism of Keir Starmer. Here's our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock, picking through it all.
This is not the start they'd wanted to a trip already riddled with risk. The British ambassador to the US told us they're very confident all appropriate security measures are in place. Donald Trump described the king as brave. Both security teams are in close contact after Saturday's gun attack at a dinner attended by the president.
They would look carefully at where anyone could actually get near. Now, clearly, some of it is in the White House, but there are areas where, as I understand it, either the public and or individuals will be allowed near. And the question has to arise, what security has been planned for, how are they going to implement it to ensure either a terrorist attack and or somebody who's mentally ill or fixated, either with the president or the king, can be prevented.
So the focus returns to the king and what will be his most delicate and challenging state visit. Relations have hit rock bottom. Can the king's royal touch help heal the rift? The president certainly has a soft spot for the British monarchy.
Is King Charles, who's a great guy. He's a nice guy. He's a friend of mine. He's a great gentleman.
But contrast the president's praise for royalty with his pointed put-downs on our prime minister.
This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with. Well, he hasn't been supportive, and I think it's a big mistake. UK has been very, very uncooperative.
And it's off-the-cuff comments like this the palace will be wary of. Constitutionally, the king's politically neutral, so couldn't respond. But it would be embarrassing.
I think it'll be difficult if the war is still going on with Iran. I don't think there's any doubt about that. There is also a risk with the Trump administration, particularly I think Trump himself and his vice president, that they do express sort of sharp criticisms of various British institutions, not the monarchy.
The last time a British monarch set foot stateside was Queen Elizabeth in 2007. The president, George W. Bush. The political backdrop, far more friendly. Both sides say this visit is all about recognising and celebrating partnerships, but diplomatically it is a difficult deployment. With stepped-up security, prepare for a fascinating few days. The big question, will all of this stabilise a turbulent political situation? Laura Bundup, Sky News in Washington.
Well, let's pivot back to the shooting in Washington, but stick on the broad topic of news from the US. Victoria Churchill joins us now, the US political reporter for the Daily Mail. Thanks so much for joining us. Victoria, you were in the room at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, is that right? Talk us through how it felt as it unfolded.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me early this morning. I was in the room for the Daily Mail's U.S. team. We had 2.5 tables at the dinner. We were sitting mainly towards the back of the room. I've actually told a couple folks that I've talked to since the incident that, silly old me, I was running late, as I sometimes am. I was outside taking pictures until about 8:12, with, of course, the official program start time being, right on, bang on 8 o'clock. And so by the time I walked in, things were kind of pretty underway. People were digging into their salad course at the meal. And, they had done what we call the presentation of the colors. So we had the flags with the military kind of processional right down the center aisle. So I was right down that kind of gap that you had between the tables in the ballroom from the back door all the way to the front of the room where the principals like the president, first lady, vice president, press secretary Caroline Leavitt, et cetera, were sitting. And so, we had the presentation of the colors, we had kind of brief remarks from the stage, and during this part, the lights were kind of lower, and then they opened up, the theater lights or the main ballroom lights to indicate to folks that we could resume conversations at our table. And like I said, we were doing that as well as going back to our salad course. And then really about 10 minutes into that is when we heard, from my point of view, and I was, like I said, I was maybe 2 levels of tables in from the back door. And so what I heard, it was 3 or 4 shots in rapid succession, bang, 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 which I guess now that we've seen the video footage was the Secret Service fire as the guy was, kind of running past them. And to me, it sounded like those bangs were either directly behind me or direct and above. And again, it seems like it was one and or both of those, because again, based now on footage that we've seen, the guy came down the stairs. And yeah, I mean, as I've indicated in several interviews that I've done since then, I'm actually somebody that participates in the shooting sports. I'd say for America as a whole, that makes me not very unique. I'm one of millions of Americans that does that. But in a room of kind of your high up Washington society, I feel like that does make me a little bit more of the minority. And so, for me, like, I knew exactly what that was. I could tell, there's kind of some confusion throughout the room. I mean, of course, we've seen the video of Melania Trump. She herself didn't really know what was going on. And I think that reaction that we saw on her face was quite indicative of the rest of the room. You know, people were like, did people drop some tables, or not some tables, excuse me, some tableware, or was it balloons, or, people were kind of trying to make sense of it. But again, like I said, I'm somebody that's actually around firearms quite frequently, so I knew exactly what that was. So what I did is, I dove right under the table, because also if you are in circles around firearms, they actually teach you that your firearm is your last resort. And so what they teach you is situational awareness and danger avoidance, kind of as your first two MOs, modus operandi, if you will. And so, yeah, like I said, I dove under the table for about 45 seconds to a minute. By the time I had come out from under that, Secret Service was clearing principals out of the room. I personally saw, top leaders being escorted out of the room.
And Victoria, what do you think happens next? Do you think we see a political impact from all of this? Or, it's unbelievable to have to reflect on this. It's obviously not the first time this has happened to President Trump, so maybe there won't be much consequence.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things. I think one thing that makes this unique, I guess, if you will, is that the president and the media were both on the potentially receiving end of this, if you will, both from where we were and where the would-be assailant was. And then also kind of the level of course, we've read his manifesto that, the media and guests of the hotel at large were not necessarily his targets, but he was willing and able to go to and through us to reach his target. And I think that is, I think that really, I think for a lot of members of the Washington press corps, they see themselves as separate from the president. And so to be grouped in like that, I think is different. And, I also want to say that it's not only in the would be a shooter's assailant's mind, but actually, as we were walking into the venue, we had to walk through protesters outside, and they were actually kind of sharing that same point of view of, basically, if you're attending this dinner, you're complicit in whatever grievances people had with the Trump administration. And again, I think that is new for a lot of media to be kind of looped in with the president like that, because
It's been so interesting to talk, and we're glad that you managed to, stay safe during what must have been a pretty unbelievable experience. Thank you very much indeed, Victoria.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the growing pressure on Keir Starmer.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking.
Thank you so much.
Trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to warn.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Welcome back. Well, it's a huge week for the Prime Minister, although he is looking to kind of reset and refocus on policy today. He's got a speech about shoplifting after weeks of criticism about Peter Mandelson. We can talk now to Rob Powell, our political correspondent. So he wants to talk about shoplifting, but I guess all eyes are also on what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think it's the sort of long lead into the May elections as well. And I think that's the danger, because what's been happening with Peter Mandelson and that fiasco feels like it sort of drained him of political energy in advance of what could be a really tricky set of results. And as you suggest, I think there's more to come. Tomorrow, you've got 2 eye-catching committee appearances, following on from Ollie Robbins, obviously, last week. We'll hear from Philip Barton, Ollie Robbins' predecessor at the Foreign Office, the former permanent Under-Secretary. And I guess that matters because Keir Starmer said last week that he didn't think any pressure was put on the Foreign Office to basically push through Peter Mandelson's security clearances. He clarified that over the weekend in an interview, saying, well, what he meant was there was no pressure to basically cut corners. Of course, there was the everyday pressure of government. When can we get this done? Let's get it done as quickly as possible. But Philip Barton, we know from Ollie Robbins, felt that there was a lot of pressure incoming from number 10 from the Cabinet Office. So does he contradict Keir Starmer there? And then, of course, we have Morgan McSweeney tomorrow as well.
Isn't Barton the most interesting, just based on whether, of those 2 individuals, who's more likely to be still loyal to the Prime Minister or not? Morgan McSweeney, people aren't expecting to come out and sort of burn all the bridges that he helped build, is he?
I think, yeah, the more jeopardy for the Prime Minister, I think, is with Philip Barton. I imagine, though, he will come out and probably say something quite similar to what Ollie Robbins said. He's no longer a civil servant. So he's no longer in that position anyway, so he's able to speak a little bit more freely, as Ollie Robbins was able to as well. I think Morgan McSweeney is interesting, though, just because it's this sort of character that you've heard so much about for months and months and months. You know, the guy that sort of moves in the shadows, that masterminded the Labour election victory, that, has so many column inches devoted to him. And it's sort of the first time you'll be proper hearing from him. I know he spoke at a conference in Kyiv about Ukraine about a week or so ago, and someone had posted online saying, Morgan McSweeney voice reveal. Yeah. I think that's almost how a lot of people felt, because it was like, wow, that's what he sounds like.
Aren't we also going to get this whole thing about whether or not Morgan McSweeney swore at Sir Philip Barton, right?
Yeah, this was...
I mean, back to back, who are we going to believe?
Yeah, that was that. I think it was the line that Sam broke, wasn't it? Sam Coates, that was flagged up in that committee appearance where, Emily Thornberry used a few choice words to describe it. Morgan McSweeney, there's been briefing to papers that he said that it's not something he does. He doesn't swear at civil servants, but I imagine that will come up, and you wonder whether Emily Thornberry will get another chance to drop the F-bomb tomorrow, I guess.
Just finally, what's on the agenda after Tuesday? There is the prospect of votes being forced or not?
Well, Tuesday, at close of play Tuesday, you'll get Parliament basically proroguing ahead of the state opening of Parliament. So Tuesday is the last chance if opposition parties want to push this vote on the Privileges Committee. Essentially, there's a push by opposition parties to try and refer the Prime Minister to that committee that basically finished off Boris Johnson. It's a committee of MPs from all parties that looks into whether politicians, MPs, have misled the House. But for that inquiry to open, you need to get a vote through the Commons. Now, it's not even certain whether there will be a vote. The Speaker might decide that actually this is sort of political game playing, essentially, and there shouldn't be. But if he decides that there is going to be one, that would likely come tomorrow. And then if that referral went through, you would then end up with an investigation. I mean, personally, I'm not convinced that it would get voted through even if it came to a vote, because I'm not sure whether... It seems pretty clear that Number 10 are going to fight it, given what we've been hearing from Emma Reynolds. Emily Thornberry's been on this morning elsewhere saying that she thinks it's political game playing as well. So I think there will be a concerted effort to push back against that. That's if it even gets to the position of a vote. Maybe the Speaker just decides, actually, there's no case to answer.
Rob, great stuff. Thanks so much.
Coming up, we are going to be talking more about the King preparing to meet the President in Washington alongside our royal commentator, Alistair Bruce.
Welcome back. The King and Queen are preparing to meet President Trump in Washington later today for what's shaping up to be a relatively contentious or potentially contentious state visit. Our royal commentator, Alistair Bruce, is with us. A very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you.
How much do we think the King and Queen are looking forward to these next 3 days?
The King and Queen will throw themselves into this with their usual enthusiasm. The King will arrive with his sense of humour and will try and do his best for the United Kingdom. It's a tough time for the politicians, but the King, of course, as our ambassador in Washington said, is above politics, and he will play his part. So I think, you know, the King knows the United States so well. He's been there many times, and he has done the business of diplomacy in difficult situations all his life. And I think he will peacefully and calmly deliver a perfect performance.
And is the full kind of red carpet, if you like, being rolled out by
Yes,
Donald Trump?
yes. There's a formal reception when he arrives at the air base, and you know, so you'll see a bit of American military splendour, and then arriving at the White House, the same thing. The United States knows very well how to put on good protocol, and they have designed their own way of doing it, and the King knows that, and he's seen his mother in the past arrive and be properly looked after by the Americans, and he'll be properly looked after. And I know it's very contentious with the attempt that was made potentially on the president's life, but I think, you know, the King knows that in the business he is in, this is part of the environment that you live through.
So clearly you think he's going to be perfectly sort of deliver on his duty publicly. What happens in those private conversations that we know obviously he's had before with the president, that his mother had with the president? Is there any sense that he'll use those moments just to say quietly, look, we really need the UK and the US to stay close friends, back off my prime minister a bit, in any manner of words?
Constitutionally, the King will have taken advice on this journey and this task from the Prime Minister and from the Foreign Secretary. And so the King will probably have a list of things he needs to try and achieve for the United Kingdom. And he deploys his charm and his sense of humour and his self-effacement, often to enormous effect. And I'm sure he will have that list and will try and do what he can in private. I think that he will also have to be prepared to effortlessly deal with, in his own quite charming way, any comments that Trump might put out there at the very point that the King is with him. We have witnessed in the past heads of state put into pretty difficult and uncomfortable positions. But I don't think the president's going to do that, because he's always remembering his mother's photo albums and newspaper cuttings of the King's mother and of the royal family. And I think that the King knows that the president has a great care for and interest in the royal family, of which the King is, of course, the head.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, they've kind of avoided the kind of Zelensky moment, if you like, haven't they? They've tried to limit some of those media gotcha moments, if you like, of the president and the King together. But you can't control, of course, what Donald Trump might be tweeting or whatever during the visit. So I guess there is still that jeopardy. I
think there is. Of course, the King has great respect for his grandfather, George VI, who quite soon after becoming sovereign in 1939 went on what was the first state visit by a British monarch, but also perhaps the most critical in order to try and garner a sense of connection with America in the build-up to the Second World War. Our relationship with the United States over the last 250 years has been pretty challenging from time to time. I mean, there was the 1812 war when, in 1815, the British army burnt down the White House. So, you know, times have been tough. And I think to assume that this is a point of extreme difficulty fails to look at the history we've had.
So interesting, the historical context there. It really is.
What the last state visit by a British monarch to the US was when? That was the Queen with George Bush.
Yes, and Elizabeth II went over. I mean, she went on several occasions, and I think she always carried that air of the links that had existed during the Second World War when her father as king had been so closely associated, not least with Eisenhower, who went on to be the first president of the United States that Elizabeth II visited. So, you know, there are these very strong links, and I think that that is what endures, even in some of the closest marriages, quite a lot of items of kitchen furniture can get thrown around.
Just quickly on the bit that I'm looking forward to most, which is his address to Congress. I mean, that is incredibly rare for foreign leaders.
Elizabeth II did it. It is rare for foreign leaders, but I think that underscores the fact that there is a great closeness. And for Congress to receive the King, it means that Congress wants to do that, not just the president suggesting that they should. There may be a wafer-thin distance between those two requirements, but for the King to be asked to address Congress, marking this 250th anniversary of the independence of the United States from being a colony of this country. I mean, it's an extraordinary history anyway. I think for him to be there will be very powerful.
You mentioned his humour and charm. I mean, presumably he will in some way refer to that irony and in a self-deprecating way. I mean, that you know, any Brit that spent time in America and been around, not on the 250th 4th of July, but any 4th of July, it always comes up a little bit. But for the King to do that in Congress will be quite unbelievable.
Well, I think watch the way he does it. He just has a sense of humour in his formal speeches that I think works really effectively. I think it's always self-effacing. It dances as he can as a sovereign who has ancestors about whom Shakespeare wrote. He can dance with history in a way nobody else can.
What a phrase.
Yeah, it's lovely. Can I ask about the security arrangements as well? Because obviously the royal family and the security around them will have witnessed the events that happened over the weekend. Do you think they'll be alarmed? Do you think they'll be re-looking at things?
I am convinced that the United States, and the President in particular, will want Charles III to return to the United Kingdom. With that as an aim, I think that there are any numbers of levels that security organisations can be carried to in order to achieve that. I think the United States is suffering from a shock at the moment. It is perhaps not a Kennedy moment, but it is those moments when the vulnerability of the head of state is revealed is always unsettling. And I think for a nation it will have to address that. And perhaps the King's visit will help to enable the United States to show what it can be. And I'm sure that the King would want that to be self-evident.
Alistair, great stuff. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Dancing with history.
It's beautiful turn of phrase. Thank you, Alistair.
As always, Alistair Bruce there. And again, ongoing coverage of the state visit over the next couple of days here on Sky News. Now, the situation in the Middle East has, of course, had a big impact on the cost of living, particularly on fuel costs. We're joined now by Alan Chang, who's the Chief Executive of Fuse Energy. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's funny that we're looking again today at oil prices rising. Let me just check for the latest. It's up another couple of percent oil this morning to more than that now, 2.8% to $108 a barrel on Brent. Is that fully felt on domestic energy prices yet, domestic petrol prices yet, or do you think there's worse to come?
Yeah, I think there is worse to come, right? Ultimately, there is a delay in, shipping delays from the GCC imports we're currently dependent on. Yeah.
So do you expect it to get much worse for households?
I expect it to get much worse, correct.
And by when?
I mean, we'll see how long this war lasts, but, it could be a couple of months.
Even if we do see some kind of improvement in the hostilities in the Strait of Hormuz reopening, does it ease as quickly as it's worsened, or I guess it takes some time for ships to get here?
Yeah, so it does. It will take some time for the ships to get here. Also, there has been a lot of damage, into the oil and gas facilities in the Middle East. So it will take a couple of years to completely restart production. Mm-hmm. So I expect this impact to last potentially up to a couple of years.
When you assess stepping back just from this war, though, or maybe this war is providing a good reminder of the key points, but stepping back from it all, what are the key addressable vulnerabilities of our energy system in the UK?
Yeah, so I'd say the UK is over-reliant on mainly two technologies. It's renewables and gas. Ultimately, what you want is a diversified portfolio of different energy technologies that are uncorrelated to each other. So to give an example, approximately 50% of our energy came from renewables in 2024. However, 85% of the time, the gas set the price, energy price in the UK. And that's because of the intermittency of renewables, right? Obviously, when the sun is shining, all solar parks are producing energy. When the wind is blowing, all wind parks are producing energy. And vice versa is also true. And essentially, the UK is super vulnerable to, externalities that the UK does not control. So a much better, more resilient system is basically investing in various energy technologies. So, for example, we need to restart and increase the gas production. So since 2020, roughly the gas output in the UK halved, and the UK imported roughly 115 billion of energy during the Russian war. So it's about restarting gas production as well as restarting the coal capacity. So in case anything happens, you can you're not solely relying on one technology. you can rely on a basket of technologies.
Do you really think it's a viable prospect to restart coal capacity in this country?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you think that politically is... I mean, I don't think you hear that from anybody on any side of the aisle.
Well, maybe politically is not the most exciting thing to back, but it is important, right? Ultimately, like you do need, if the wind is not blowing, sun is not shining, and the gas prices go through the roof, you do want some like backup, coal capacity to depend on, right?
Can nuclear offer that?
Nuclear can also offer that, yes, but right now nuclear is also. It's super hard to build nuclear in this country, right? We have an aging nuclear fleet, and the nuclear fleet is not a new nuclear fleet is not being, built fast enough to replace the aging fleet.
Alan, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Alan Chang from Fuse Energy. Time for a quick look at the weather.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
It'll be mostly dry and settled this week, although more showery than recently, especially today and on Friday. Britain will be mainly fine and mild this morning, with southern parts having the best sunny spells, but Scotland will see showers developing widely. They'll reach northern England around lunchtime, while north-western Scotland will tend to dry up. Elsewhere, Northern Ireland and the north of Ireland look quite cloudy, with the odd shower possible. Expect temperatures similar to yesterday's. Northern, central and eastern England will see heavy, blustery and locally thundery showers.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
We just wanted to bring you another perspective, shall we say, about the state visit to the United States. So the family of Virginia Giuffre, one of the most well-known survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse, has criticised the King's visit, saying it's a missed opportunity, and her family have told Sky News that the King should be meeting with Epstein survivors while there. Here's Sky's James Matthews.
King Charles will be here in Washington next week, but not everybody is celebrating. The week of his arrival coincides with an anniversary. It's a year since Virginia Giuffre took her own life. She's the woman who accused the former Prince Andrew of sexually abusing her aged 17 when she was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew denied it, but he did settle a civil lawsuit that Virginia brought against him. Her family and other survivors of abuse by Jeffrey Epstein have gathered here in Washington to honour her memory. When the King arrives, some survivors want to meet him, but he has said no.
This is a missed opportunity to him because we are 5 minutes away from you. I will be lobbying in the Capitol Hill, in the Capitol building, on that same day that you'll be arriving. And it's a missed opportunity because even if it's not to go into depths, it means something to look into a survivor's eyes and say, I promise to give you a fair and thorough investigation in this. And that does not matter if it's my brother or if it's other perpetrators out there. I, the King of England, stand with survivors.
We were hoping that just that one thread of acknowledgement, it would set an example to our own president and to the rest of the leadership in the world that we need to take this seriously.
When the monarch meets the president, there will be lavish spectacle. There will also be the shadow of Epstein. The child sex trafficker was a friend to one man and also to the brother of the other. Donald Trump and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor deny knowledge of Epstein's criminal activity or any involvement in it. Buckingham Palace, it says the King and Queen won't be able to meet with survivors in case anything arises from such a meeting that would impact on or prejudice investigations and any resulting legal action. The King in the past has spoken of his deepest concern at events involving his brother and has said that he supports an investigation.
James Matthews there for us. As you can see, Jackie has joined us because we have the sport coming up.
And what an amazing weekend of sport it was. I mean, can't really fit it all in, but I think the standout thing has got to be the London Marathon and just a bit of sporting history made. They said it couldn't be done in a race, but it was twice, sub 2 hours in the London Marathon. So we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about the FA Cup final because we now know the lineup. Chelsea were pretty good yesterday, considering what's gone before. It was quite surprising. We'll look at the goal there. And you want to talk about Rochdale and York and the tussle that was to try and get into the Football League pyramid. It was an extraordinary story.
Yeah,
so,
it's an amazing one.
Too. Yeah.
With respect, Minister, answer the question.
It's you. Hello and welcome, I'm Cathy Newman.
So could the outcome of these elections be manipulated? New me, new show, new furniture. Hard news needs a hard chair. I feel like I'm in therapy. Oh, there's room for two on this one. Do you think people will take me seriously with my feet up?
Sorry, madam, but we're closing now.
Oh, sorry. Sofa sorted. Let's get this show on the road.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
With respect, Minister, answer the question.
It's you. Hello and welcome, I'm Cathy Newman.
So could the outcome of these elections be manipulated? New me, new show, new furniture. Hard news needs a hard chair. I feel like I'm in therapy. Oh, there's room for two on this one. Do you think people will take me seriously with my feet up?
Sorry, madam, but we're closing now.
Oh, sorry. Sofa sorted. Let's get this show on the road.
The Data and Forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories.
Sky News has been given exclusive data.
Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on. They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Oof. OK, nothing to see here, drama over, full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
So she's the first female chancellor. I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts. The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Welcome back. Jackie's here to give us all of the day's sport, and there is a lot to get to, but once again, we start with,
the marathon.
world record stuff.
I mean, it's one of those things that's right up there with a 4-minute mile, to run a sub 2 hour marathon and to have two men do it. I mean, if the guy came second, never run a marathon before. Oh, my God. So, that's just extraordinary. I'll give it a go. Oh, I've just run 2 hours. Anyway, Sebastian Solway, winning the London Marathon, running sub 2 hours, and our correspondent, Emma Birchley, was there to see it.
Neck and neck with just minutes to go. But it would be Kenya's Sebastian Solway who'd crossed the line first to head straight into the history books, not only with a new world record, but with the first official sub-2-hour marathon ever. What do you think it was about London today that made it so fast?
We had a strong team, and the pacers did their jobs well. And also the weather today was so favorable, and that's why it helps us, and we ran well today.
Did you set out to break this 2-hour barrier? Did you want to, was that the plan all along?
Yeah, I was ready because the pace was so fast, and I knew something good will come, and finally it comes.
London's not known for being fast. On the day, the course, the conditions and the crowds helped make it happen. Even second-place Yomif Kajelcha from Ethiopia beat the 2-hour barrier. And this is first ever marathon. It had been done once before in 2019, but only with the help of rotating pacemakers.
I've spoken to experts in the world of running who were adamant a few years ago that it was totally impossible, would never happen, and then Eliud Kipchoge did it in a carefully orchestrated time trial, I think 7 years ago now. But it's never been done in a bona fide race until today. And Sebastian Sawe has done it, and he did it by half a minute as well. Quite incredible.
The women were faster than ever too. Ethiopia's Tigista Sefa beating her own world record in her second consecutive London Marathon. But the records were being smashed this year long before anyone crossed the line, with more than 1 million people entering the ballot for a starting spot, the most applicants for a marathon ever. Every one of the 59,000 taking part will have a story to tell of their 26.2 miles, but no one more so than the man who managed a feat once seen as simply unachievable. Emma Birchley, Sky News, Central London.
What a day.
I know, it'll be interesting to see like where it ranks in terms of athletic achievement, where things that you remember, where it would go. I mean, it's got to be right up there.
Also,
with
but
Usain Bolt and
this discussion taking place between 3 people that have not run the marathon, don't plan to run the marathon, with an enormous appreciation for absolutely everyone that did run. How many did you say it was?
59,000, including Beth
Well
Rigby.
done, everyone.
Yeah, well done, Beth.
Yeah, well done,
Beth.
everyone.
Second
Amazing.
Well done, Chelsea, through to the FA Cup final to face Manchester City at the weekend. I don't think many people perhaps would have predicted that. In fact, a lot of people thought that Leeds were favourite to win that match, given the abject performances that Chelsea have been putting in, including that, recent awful 3-0 defeat to Brighton, which got their manager Liam Rosenior sacked last week, and then to go out at Wembley and actually be quite gritty and put up quite a fight was, I don't think anybody expected. And the guy is sort of been quite a rebel, really. Enzo Fernandez, coming out in the international break and saying, well, I really like Madrid, and getting suspended for 2 matches because of it. He got the winning goal. There was only 1 goal. It was early on. Leeds were quite nervous. Daniel Farke said the occasion slightly got to them, but it is a talking point. Did they get their manager sacked by the way they played? And when they really needed to put it all together, they could.
And the club had to respond and pay out another manager on an unbelievably long contract. So it's sort of perfect storm.
Goes in as interim manager for the second time this season. I mean,
it's got a very good record, hasn't it?
You couldn't really make it up. Should we have a look at Scotland? Because the title race in Scotland is so tight, and it is a proper title race, isn't it? Hearts leading the way. They almost weren't. Rangers slipped up this weekend. They're 4 points behind. Celtic won. They looked like they were going top of the table at one point. Hearts, though, finally getting the win they needed over 9-man Hibs. And honestly, if you couldn't get that win over 9-man Hibs, like pretty much the whole second half was 9 men, there would have been questions asked. But they did. Blair Spittles, 86th minute, that winner. And it could turn out to be absolutely vital and valuable as goals go.
I love that crowd reaction. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, well, they're in it to win it. They've all got to play each other. Interestingly, starting from Rangers, all got to play each other.
God, this part of the season, when it is all to play for, which it is in so many of the big competitions, it's so exciting.
Yeah, Premier League, all to play for at the top and the bottom. I mean, I don't know if you watched all the relegation matches at the weekend,
Some
but it
critical
was.
late goals
there were
again. Callum Wilson,
many late
West Ham.
goals. I mean, talk about swinging one way then the other. we should talk about Coventry, who will be joining the Premier League next season. Let's have a look at Cardiff lifting the trophy yesterday. Great celebrations, because it's been 25 years since they left the top flight. Nobody thought it would be that long. They've had lots of trials and tribulations, but Frank Lampard, the man who's led them back to the promised land of the Premier League, and have been so good this season. 3-1 win over Wrexham at the weekend, kind of finishing the whole thing and start. One more game to go.
Which was a fascinating result anyway, because Ryan Reynolds' Wrexham are still pushing for playoff spots. It was a bad loss for them.
Yeah, it's a real dent for them. Funny thing happened, though, in the dressing room afterwards, and loads of Coventry fans are going, what's that all about? So Stephen Bunting, the darts player, went into their dressing room as they were celebrating, and he went in full darts kit to his own song, which is Titanium, and everyone's like, that's so random, because he's a Liverpool fan.
What's going on?
Well, the theory is he was invited up to the ground to throw a few darts with the lads to kind of relax them and teach them darts. And the Coventry players were playing that song Titanium quite a few times on their coach on the way back from matches. So it's sort of, they put two and two together and went, oh, let's get Stephen Bunting.
So it's his song?
Yeah, so when they walk out in the darts and they all have a song.
I thought you were saying that he was like Calvin Harris or whatever behind the scenes.
No, it's his walk music. I don't know, can you hear this?
There's no,
well, that kind of defeats the object. Anyway, right, so... there's a little bit of sound. But yeah, they obviously like that song. So let's just quickly mention
15 seconds, could be very quick.
Rochdale York. 1 minute Rochdale were back in the Football League. Then there's a pitch invasion.
Amazing.
Then York scored, and they're the ones that go up.
Yeah.
Amazing story.
My favourite sports story of the weekend. The madness of football, I think, encapsulated there.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood has rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.